Chapter 880. The violent waves continued to sweep in all directions. All the swords in the divine land were fighting fiercely, and many mortal swords' blades were directly broken. Whether they were right in front of them or far away, cracks also appeared on the swords of the lower-grade magic treasures. The light waves dissipated, and everyone focused their attention on it. Everyone was slightly stunned when they saw it. Sword Venerable Tongtian, Old Sword Immortal, Thunderous Sword Venerable, and Flowing Light Sword Venerable were even a bit dazed. In the sky, Lin Feng and Xian Longxing were still facing each other, far away in the void. It was as if their positions had never changed. They were not facing each other, but were still in the same position before the battle. The sky-crushing sword in Lin Feng's hand had returned to its original appearance. It was like a pool of limpid autumn water, flashing with a fierce, clear light, and a blood-red sword light flowing on the blade. Black and white divine light surged from his body, and countless characters and talismans floated in the sky, turning into layers of light. Xian Longxing also held the immortal heaven sword, and stood in the void silently. The spirit energy of heaven and earth gathered toward him, turning into an incomparably huge, invisible sword edge that was everywhere, pointing at Lin Feng. However, even an ordinary mortal could clearly see that blood-red cracks had appeared on the originally flawless immortal heaven sword's blade. The result of the battle just now was that Xian Longxing's immortal heaven sword was injured by Lin Feng's sky-crushing sword. The Emperor of Swords, the number one divine sword in the heaven origin world, the ancestor of all swords, the immortal heaven sword, the creation Dharma treasure, was damaged. After the immortal heaven sword was completely perfected and became a creation Dharma treasure, it had been damaged before. It had also been defeated and damaged in battles against powerful enemies. However, in battles against other sword Daos and Dharma treasures, the immortal heaven sword had never tasted defeat and had always been an invincible existence. But today, the immortal heaven sword was defeated, and it was injured by other sword Daos. Sword Venerable Tongtian and the other sword cultivators stared blankly at Lin Feng and the sky-crushing sword in his hand, unable to recover for a long time. Deep in their hearts, the immortal heaven sword Qi and the altar where the immortal heaven sword stood on were constantly crumbling. After Tiangang's sword Venerable, the number one swordsman in the divine land, was defeated by Lin Feng and the heaven-punishing sword, the number one swordsman in the divine land, the immortal heaven sword, was also defeated. At this moment, Xian Longxing's eyes were gloomy, and his face was a little ruined. He was not depressed, but because he had not fully recovered from the Dharma-ending catastrophe, his magic power inevitably fell into a low after that sword attack. He stared at Lin Feng and said word by word, "I was the one who lost, not the heavenly immortal sword energy or the heavenly immortal sword." Just now, Xian Longxing perfectly displayed his full strength. Even when facing Lin Feng and the heaven-punishing sword, he was able to display his full strength. However, after this attack, he no longer had the strength to activate the immortal heaven sword to its limit. "I'm not as good as you, not because the heavenly immortal sword energy is inferior to your heaven-punishing sword energy, and definitely not because the immortal heaven sword lost to your heaven-punishing sword." Xian Longxing took a deep breath, took out the immortal heaven sword, and flew toward Yujing Mountain, which was blocking Tiangang's sword Venerable's way. Lin Feng calmly watched this scene and made Yujing Mountain move out of the way, allowing Xian Longxing to successfully deliver the immortal heaven sword to Tiangang's sword Venerable. Yujing Mountain suddenly moved and landed on top of Lin Feng's head, faintly discernible in the void. Tiangang's sword Venerable held the ancient sword in his left hand, and there were still specks of white light floating on his right arm. He had already refined his body into his origin spirit, and his origin spirit could easily change ordinary injuries, at least not on the outside. At this moment, his injury could not be healed because his foundation was injured by Lin Feng's sword. He needed to rest, and there was no time or energy to care during the battle. But now, Tiangang's sword venerable used his injured right hand to catch the immortal heaven sword and threw the ancient sword to Xian Longsheng. The spirit chi of heaven and earth gathered toward him, and a shocking scene appeared. The injury on Tiangang's sword venerable's right arm was gradually healing. The blood-red cracks on the immortal heaven sword's blade also disappeared at a speed visible to the naked eye. With the immortal heaven sword in Tiangang's sword venerable's hand, the power of both sides gradually resonated, and there was a vague effect of 1 + 1 being greater than 2. Tiangang's sword venerable, who was in the Dharma ending realm, activated the immortal heaven sword, and its power was different from when Xian Longsheng used it. The entire vast 1,000 domains seemed to have turned into a sea of starlight, and each star was condensed by an unparalleled sword intent. Lin Feng bent his finger and gently flicked the blade of his heaven-crushing sword. After the battle with the immortal heaven sword just now, the heaven-crushing sword's blade was now shining with a cold light, and there was only a trace of rust left. The terrifying sword intent that could destroy heaven and earth and destroy creation was unprecedentedly powerful. It had completely surpassed all Mahayana-grade Dharma treasures in the world, and even surpassed the power of other Dharma treasures that had the chance to become a creation Dharma treasure. It surpassed the incomplete Immortal Dragon City before the battle at West Hill City, the incomplete Book of Life and Death before the 6 Paths of Reincarnation, and the incomplete Paramitha Golden Bridge. It could even be said that in terms of pure offensive power, this terrifying sky-crushing sword was not inferior to the celestial heavenly sword, a Dharma treasure of creation. Apart from being unable to withstand the Dharma-ending tribulation, it was no different from a Dharma treasure of creation in terms of power. In terms of pure offensive power and destructive power, it was even superior to some creation Dharma treasures. Lin Feng looked at Tiangang's sword venerable in front of him and smiled faintly. Your Shu Mountain has the immortal heaven, and I have the heaven-crushing sword. It's up to you. Come and fight me. He drew the tip of his sword, stood tall, and fought against sword venerable Tiangang. The Celestial Dipper sword venerate activated the immortal heaven sword and unleashed his most powerful divine ability, the Celestial Sword Star River. Boundless sword light fused with the stars and gathered together, sweeping toward Lin Feng like a surging river. Wherever the galaxy went, the scenery of heaven and earth followed. The spirit chi of the vast 1,000 worlds all entered the galaxy of sword light, causing the galaxy formed by the many Tiangang sword stars to become even more vast and majestic. The celestial sword venerable, thunderous sword venerable, flowing light sword venerable, and the other sword cultivators who were watching the battle made a seemingly ridiculous and embarrassing move. They all retreated and returned to their sects. However, the others did not laugh at them. If Celestial Sword Venerable and the others did not leave, they might be involuntarily attracted by the sword intent of the immortal heaven sword and throw themselves into the heavenly sword galaxy to attack Lin Feng together. Even if they could control themselves, their swords would automatically leave their sheaths and merge with the tide of heaven and earth as swords and all things as blades. At this moment, all the mortal swords in the divine land flew out and gathered in the direction of Shu Mountain, toward Tiangang's sword venerable and the immortal heaven sword. Many low and mid-tier flying swords also flew out. There were even nascent soul-level magic swords that flew over. Thousands of swords entered the heavenly sword galaxy together, making it even more dazzling. Those who had experienced the war between the two worlds 4,600 years ago were all shocked. For thousands of years, they had only seen such a scene in the war between the Divine Land and Tianhuang continent. That time, it was caused by the previous sect master of the Shu Mountain sword sect controlling the immortal heaven sword. At this moment, it was as if the scene from thousands of years ago had reappeared. The sky was filled with flying swords, extremely spectacular. Lin Feng slowly recited, "All the swords in the world come from Shu Mountain, but my sword is beyond the heavens." The sky-crushing sword in his hand shook, and all the sword light converged. The blade became blood-red again, and the black and white divine light condensed to the extreme, turning into a faint light that rolled on the tip of the sky-crushing sword. At this moment, the tip of the sky-crushing sword suddenly turned from blood-red to a chaotic, blurry color. It was so mysterious and unpredictable that it could not be described with words. However, wherever the tip of the heaven-crushing sword reached, the myriad domains were instantly reduced to nothingness. There was actually a faint flicker of light between the heavens and the earth, but after coming into contact with the tip of the heaven-crushing sword, the light completely dimmed and collapsed. Lin Feng waved the sword in his hand and directly split the Tiangang sword Venerable's heavenly sword galaxy with the momentum of splitting the sea. Where the sword tip pointed, Lin Feng controlled the sky-crushing sword and the Tiangang sword Venerable controlled the immortal heaven sword. What made the people of Shu Mountain shiver was that the scales of victory were gradually tipping in favor of Lin Feng and the sky-crushing sword. Even the Tiangang sword Venerable was more and more shocked as the battle went on. Stonefeather, Liang Pan, Zhu Hongwu, and the others who were still watching the battle had slightly serious expressions. Liang Pan shook his head slowly, but his tone was calm and calm. The mystique and dermic powers of the Master of the Celestial Gate are indeed shocking. Xianmen Tianzong is now firmly in the Divine Land, the second most powerful force after Taishu Temple. Even Taishu Temple will have to use all its strength to win. Zhu Hongwu's gaze was fixed on Yujing Mountain. He has the advantage against the Tiangang sword Venerable and the Immortal Heaven sword with the sky-crushing sword, but to turn this into victory, he needs his Yujing Mountain to join the battle as well. However, although he can defeat the combination of Tiangang sword Venerable and the Immortal Heaven sword, he may not be able to kill Tiangang sword Venerable or break the Immortal Heaven sword. With his Tao corroboration Dharma treasure, that bell, and that unfilial son's Permitha bridge, there is hope, Liang Pan said. Shu Mountain will not admit defeat so easily. He cannot suppress the others of Shu Mountain with just the yin-yang life and death formation. As they spoke, the peaks of Shu Mountain shook violently. The violent power made the great immortal heaven manifestation sword formation a little unstable, but it also affected the yin-yang life and death formation. Lin Feng lowered his head slightly and saw that below the main peak of Shu Mountain, the 6 peaks of the 6 pulse swords had all uprooted and floated into the sky. The 6 thick pillars of light that enveloped the 6 peaks began to condense. Under the guidance of the pillars of light, the tips of the 6 sword peaks all merged into the huge circular formation that surrounded the main peak of Shu Mountain. During the process, the other 5 sword peaks were fine, but the rocks of Little Shang's sword peak kept falling like rain, bombarding the undulating mountains below. The rocks on the periphery of the mountain kept falling, and the belly of the mountain flashed with dazzling light. That seemed to be an endless accumulation of sword light, and now it was finally released and saw the light of day again. The sword light that originally belonged to Little Shang's sword peak first completely merged into the great immortal heaven manifestation sword formation. Then, the great immortal heaven manifestation sword formation seemed to have suddenly eaten a huge supplement, and the majestic force caused the yin-yang life and death formation to continuously retreat. The dazzling sword light continued to erupt, as if there was no end. Seeing this, Lin Feng's expression did not change at all. He carefully felt the yin-yang life and death formation, and instead nodded slightly in satisfaction. Chapter 881. The 6 peaks of Shushan's 6 meridians sword armament had been passed down through generations of Shushan swordsmen over the years. Boundless sword will had long been integrated into the peaks, making them truly sword peak. Throughout Shushan, many sword cultivators, regardless of their level of cultivation, converted the spiritual chi of heaven and earth into their own sword will and spiritual power during their daily training. In this process, they constantly nourished the sword peaks they were on. Now that the 6 sword peaks had been uprooted, the Shushan disciples on the mountains had all been moved. The little Shang sword peak was the first to shatter, releasing the sword will it had accumulated over the years and pouring it into the great immortal universe sword formation. The mountains shattered and the sword will integrated. After this battle, the little Shang sword peak would no longer exist. If there were any experts left in Shushan, they would move mountains and seas to rebuild the little Shang sword peak. Shushan would continue to burn incense, and the sword will would accumulate again. As the battle progressed, the other 5 sword peaks were also ready to supply their accumulated sword will and sword chi to the great immortal universe sword formation at any time. The brilliant light made the world of the sword formed by the great immortal universe sword formation increasingly clear and real. Even the yin and yang life and death formation, under the bombardment of the explosive increase in power, kept retreating. It seemed to be on the verge of losing control of the great immortal universe sword formation. Xiaoyi, let me borrow your Permitha bridge for a while, Lin Feng said with a light smile, his expression relaxed. On Jade Capital Mountain, a magnificent golden bridge descended like a rainbow piercing through the sky, landing in the middle of the yin and yang life and death formation. Lin Feng smiled. Although it's not completely compatible, it's suitable for now. As the Permitha bridge entered the formation, the yin and yang life and death formation's power also skyrocketed, reaching a new level. It steadily suppressed the great immortal universe sword formation below. The brilliant light provided by the little Shang sword peak was constantly worn down until it was exhausted. Sword Venerable Firmament, who was in charge of the great immortal universe sword formation, was expressionless. With a sword gesture, the little Shang sword peak that had been integrated into the formation began to disintegrate, turning into a sea of rubble that fell to the ground. It was as if a sword had been unsheathed and a peerless divine sword had been unsheathed from within. Its bright brilliance seeped into the great immortal universe's sword formation of all manifestations. Without flinching, it faced the yin and yang life and death formation above its head head-on. It wanted to break through the suppression of the yin and yang life and death formation and rendezvous with Big Dipper swordsman. On the other side, the celestial Dipper sword sovereign held the immortal heaven sword and silently looked at Lin Feng. He didn't waste any words and continued to advance. Lin Feng clasped his left hand behind his back and held the Heaven Destroyer sword in his right hand. Both of them dove into the void and fought like 2 gods of the universe, causing the heavens to collapse and the earth to crack. Watching the battle, Liang Pan and Zhu Hongwu secretly sighed in pity. Looking at Yujing Mountain, who was floating in the air as if he had nothing to do with it, they shook their heads. With Lin Feng's Yujing Mountain town there, others who wanted to take advantage of it would have to weigh their options and not act rashly. But this way, he will not be able to kill Sword Sovereign Tian Dipper or break the Immortal Heaven Sword. Even if he uses his treasure, he will only be able to defeat the Sword Sovereign and the Immortal Heaven Sword. In order to completely kill him, he will have to fight to the death. Even if the Celestial Dipper Sword Sovereign fights to the death and is killed, he will have to pay a huge price himself. Liang Pan nodded. His Yujing Mountain is not only defending against us, but also against the interference of the people from Taishu Temple. But in this battle, he is destined to only humiliate Shu Mountain and not achieve a decisive result, unless he has other tricks up his sleeve. Liang Pan frowned slightly. It's still the same question. Why must he come to Shu Mountain to fight? Zhu Hongwu's eyes narrowed. The Immortal Heaven Sword. His target is the Immortal Heaven Sword. When fighting in the void, without the great immortal phenomenon sword formation to distract Lin Feng, the Celestial Dipper Sword Sovereign and the Immortal Heaven Sword would be in a much more dangerous situation, but there is still a high chance that they can escape. If the Celestial Dipper Sword Sovereign is willing to sacrifice himself, he can guarantee that the Immortal Heaven Sword will escape. He came to Shu Mountain because he is certain that he can completely trap the immortal heaven sword here. But what is he going to do? In the current situation, even if the immortal heaven sword is defeated, it can still escape. The ruler and minister of the great Zhou were perplexed, unable to find an answer no matter how they thought about it. And Sword Venerable Celestial Dipper, who was currently battling Lin Feng, also had the same doubts in his heart. But for him who was currently at a disadvantage, dealing with Lin Feng's destroying sky decimating earth attack was the most important matter. This was the most peak sword battle in the Divine Land in the past 10,000 years. His Shu Mountain had lost again and again, and he could not afford to lose this round. Determination flashed in the eyes of the Celestial Dipper Sword Sovereign. He held the immortal heaven sword in his right hand and fought with Lin Feng. The index and 2 fingers of his left hand formed a sword and pointed at Lin Feng. A dark and gloomy black gas turned into a perfectly straight black line, shooting towards Lin Feng. The 5 decrements of the heavens, the Dharma-ending calamity. Wherever the black aura passed, it was as if the entire world was withering and ushered in the end of the world. It was an irreversible and final destruction. Seeing this, Lin Feng chuckled. Rays of 7-colored light flashed on his void-returned Dharma body and circled around his body. The black aura of the Dharma-ending calamity directly pierced through Lin Feng's body, but it did not cause any harm to him. It was as if Lin Feng was just an illusion. The Dharma-ending calamity released by the Celestial Dipper Sword Sovereign fell on thin air just like that. All the spectators widened their eyes. Even the spiritual senses of the distant white cloud mountain trembled slightly. Before the opponent's Dharma-ending calamity was triggered and locked onto him, there was still a chance for him to avoid it. However, once the Dharma-ending calamity was triggered, it was not something that the opponent could avoid by hiding in the void. This would trigger the Deva's 5 decrepit phenomena in the opponent's body and produce a world-destroying power. At the same time, the caster would also have to bear the same Dharma-ending calamity. But now the result was that the Celestial Dipper Sword Sovereign had to bear the Dharma-ending calamity for nothing, while Lin Feng was unscathed. The Celestial Dipper Sword Sovereign stared fixedly at Lin Feng. Lin Feng's figure was faintly discernible in the void. He could clearly see him, but he had completely disappeared from his senses, as if that figure did not exist at all. 2 years ago, in the Battle of the Ying Sea, Lin Feng had used Yujing Mountain to avoid the Dharma-ending calamity of Golden Cicada, which had already shocked the world. Now, the Celestial Dipper Sword Sovereign saw that Lin Feng was not on Yujing Mountain, so he gave it a try. Who would have thought that Lin Feng himself could also avoid the Dharma-ending calamity? Lin Feng's expression was calm. The colorful halos around him disappeared, and he appeared in the void again. This was the mysterious heavenly escape. Lin Feng had comprehended the power of the mysterious heaven treasure tree on the top of Yujing Mountain. It was an exquisite escape magic power that exhausted the mystery of time and space, and also integrated many kinds of great ways of heaven and earth into it. If it was only the change of time and space, it would not be able to avoid the Dharma-ending calamity. When he was in the primordial spirit incarnation realm, he indeed had to rely on the power of the mysterious heaven treasure tree to use it. But now that he had successfully refined his spirit to return to the void, he could also use it alone. However, the Dharma-ending calamity damaged the great ways after all, and he could only use it a limited number of times in a certain period of time. However, the Celestial Dipper Sword Sovereign would not continue to attack with the Dharma-ending calamity. Lin Feng used the mysterious heavenly escape to avoid the Deva's 5 blights, but he took it head-on. Even if the limit of the Dharma-ending calamity he could withstand was more than a single digit, the attack of the blights would also weaken his magic power. Even the cultivators in the Dharma-ending realm would not easily use the Dharma-ending calamity to fight and bet on who could withstand more. Although they could slowly recover from the blights, they would be seriously injured during the battle, and their combat power would be reduced. While fighting intensely, they would not have any spare energy to recover from the blight. This is the fourth magic power in the history of the Tianyuan world that can avoid the Dharma-ending calamity. The Celestial Dipper Sword Sovereign's heart sank. In today's world, only the last technique of the 9 heavens of the Taishu Temple, the Heavenly Void Mystic Light, is left. The Celestial Dipper Sword Sovereign believed that Lin Feng's magic power must be the same as the Heavenly Void Mystic Light, and it was not a magic power that could be used infinitely. However, without knowing the details of the mysterious heavenly escape and how many blights Lin Feng could withstand, he certainly would not continue to attack with the Dharma-ending calamity. Seeing that Lin Feng had actually avoided the Dharma-ending calamity launched by the Celestial Dipper Sword Sovereign, all the spectators fell into silence after a short period of sluggishness. They looked at the Celestial Dipper Sword Sovereign, who was at an even more obvious disadvantage because he had withstood a blight. In the void, the Celestial Dipper Sword Sovereign did not say a word or make any sound, but his divine sense floated between heaven and earth like an exploding star. He merged with the immortal heaven sword, turned into a stream of light, and landed on Shu Mountain. Lin Feng looked down at the sky-crushing sword in his hand, which only had a trace of rust left. The various gains he had gained from the 3 consecutive battles with the Immortal Heaven Sword Qi and the Immortal Heaven Sword, as well as the Yin and Yang Life and Death Formation and the Great Immortal Universe Sword Formation, flashed through his mind. Slowly, he nodded. At least 80% confidence is enough. At this time, in addition to the Shaoshang Sword Peak and the Shaozi Sword Peak, Sword Sovereign Firmament had also shattered the Taiyin Sword Peak and the Guanchong Sword Peak. The sword momentum of the Great Immortal Universe Sword Formation surged, and it was locked in a stalemate with the Yin and Yang Life and Death Formation suppressed by the Permitha Golden Bridge. The Celestial Dipper Sword Sovereign's sword fell, and the Yin and Yang Life and Death Formation, which was under attack from both sides, gave way under Lin Feng's control, allowing Sword Sovereign Firmament and the Immortal Heaven Sword Formation to return to Shu Mountain. Sword Sovereign Firmament immediately transferred the control of the Great Immortal Universe Sword Formation to Sword Sovereign Firmament. Sword Sovereign Firmament guided the Immortal Heaven Sword Formation in his hand, and the aura of the entire Great Immortal Universe Sword Formation suddenly changed. Boundless sword light shot into the sky, and the world of swords suddenly expanded, as if it wanted to control the entire world. The vast 1,000 worlds and the divine land suddenly seemed to become a world of swords. With the Immortal Heaven Sword's control, the Great Immortal Universe Sword Formation finally pushed its power to the extreme. Originally, there were only pieces of sword peaks, but now, the Savage Leaving Sword Peak and the Shaoyang Sword Peak shattered together. 2 bright rays of light simultaneously entered the Great Immortal Universe Sword Formation. The power of the Sword Formation suddenly surged, and with the support of the Sword Formation, the power of the Immortal Heaven Sword also increased. Sword Sovereign Firmament swung the Immortal Heaven Sword in his hand, and the entire world turned into invisible sword edges that fell like rain, stabbing toward Lin Feng. An unprecedented violent power erupted since the start of the battle. This power had slaughtered 480 million blood god scions of the Blood River tribe in the past, and killed the primordial Taotai with a single sword. It hadn't appeared even during the war between the 2 worlds 4,000 years ago. The last time it had appeared was 10,000 years ago. Now it had finally reappeared in the world. Seeing this, Lin Feng nodded slightly. Not bad, it's indeed extraordinary. But this time, you won't be able to escape. Chapter 882. In the blink of an eye, Lin Feng felt that everything in the world had turned into cold swords stabbing at him. The stars in the sky, the earth under his feet, the white clouds in the sky, the peaks of Shu Mountain before him, the streams between the mountains, and the lush greenery. Even the glaciers in the distant Arctic tundra, the swamps in the southern wastelands, the desert wastelands in the northwest, and the waves of the East Sea seemed to have crossed through layers of space and arrived at Shu Mountain. They all turned into swords stabbing at him. The mud tiles and bamboo strips in a small village also seemed to have turned into swords, piercing through space and time. In the void where he was right now, every bit of spiritual chi that was originally under his control seemed to have instantly turned into an enemy, a fatal threat and a killing move. He breathed lightly and circulated his spirit chi and dermic powers. He felt like his body was being torn apart. The prickling pain was both fake and real. Lin Feng smiled. He held the heaven-crushing sword in his right hand and spread the fingers of his left hand, making a pressing gesture at Shu Mountain below him. Yujing Mountain descended from the void. The white jade immortal mountain glowed with light. The branches of the mysterious sky treasure tree at the top of the mountain swayed, and the purple clouds kept rolling. As Lin Feng refined his spirit and returned to Yujing Mountain, the mysterious sky treasure tree finally returned from the various world. At this moment, the mysterious sky treasure tree shook and shone with 7-colored light. As for the 1,000-zhang-tall Yujing Mountain, the earth trembled and the mountains swayed as it grew rapidly. Lin Feng smiled. Grow, grow, grow. The originally 1,000-meter-tall Yujing Mountain instantly filled the sky and earth. It was much larger than the Fangzhang Immortal Mountain, which was the largest of the 3 mountains in the Ying Sea and had a length of 2,500 miles each. At the summit of Jade Capital Mountain, the light of the profound heaven-precious tree that resembled a crystal barrier and the hazy chaotic light of Jade Capital Mountain itself once again fused into the cyclic purple chi, manifesting into auspicious clouds that resembled white jade. The overall power of Yujing Mountain was raised to the extreme and pressed down on the great immortal nature sword formation and the immortal heaven sword. At the same time, a treasure light lit up above Lin Feng's head, and the melodious sound of a bell came from the void. A large bell broke through space and descended into the mortal world. It was Lin Feng's Dharma treasure to prove his Tao, the bell of good fortune. The image of the bell gradually changed, turning into a huge, pitch-black stone door. Its surface was covered with thousands of relief carvings, ancient and desolate, giving off a strong aura of life. Bang! The door made a muffled sound and slowly opened to both sides. An invisible river flowed out from the 2 doors that opened to both sides. The river flowed without stopping, neither fast nor slow, but it had a power that would never stop. The second stage of the Bell of Good Fortune, the River of Time. The river meandered around Yujing Mountain. The mountains and rivers were interdependent and complemented each other. With the support of the River of Time, the power of Yujing Mountain increased once again, and they withstood the strongest attack from the Mount Shu sword sect. Sword Venerable Celestial Dipper was expressionless. His majestic sword will began to concentrate on one point, pointing straight at Yujing Mountain. He wanted to split the mountain open and cut Yujing Mountain apart. The realm of heaven and earth was distorted, turning into a dazzling crack that flashed with white light. This crack was imprinted on the white jade auspicious cloud outside Yujing Mountain, and the seemingly solid white jade auspicious cloud kept on rolling. Master of the Mystic Gate, hand over your life. Sword Venerable Firmament stood beside Sword Venerable Celestial Dipper. He took a deep breath, formed a sword seal, knelt on one knee, and tapped on the main peak of Shushan below him. All sound had been annihilated, and only the main peak of Shushan, which was in the center of the great immortal nature sword formation, could be seen. The outer mountain walls were falling off like the 6-pulse sword mountains before, and the rocks that fell off did not fall to the ground like before. Instead, they turned into powder under the light of the sword formation. The outer mountain walls had all fallen off, and the main peak of Shushan had also turned into a ball of surging sword light. It was much more dazzling than any of the 6-pulse sword mountains before. Other than Sword Venerable Celestial Dipper and Sword Venerable Firmament, Even the weakened Xian Longxing had been transported into the great immortal nature sword formation with the other Shushan sword cultivators. This was to protect them, and also to strengthen the great immortal nature sword formation. The sword chi and spiritual power of tens of thousands of sword cultivators resonated together, connecting into one and shaking the void. Wherever sword venerable celestial dippers immortal heaven sword pointed, the great immortal nature sword formation went completely berserk. After merging the sword will and sword chi accumulated on the main peak of Shushan, its power rose to its peak. For a moment all the spectators, including Stonefeather, Liang Pan, and Zhu Hongwu who were controlling the immortal dragon city, the grand imperial palace, and the great celestial wheel, felt a little dazed. In front of them, it was as if the entire world no longer existed. All that was left was a huge white jade sword. It was the appearance of the immortal heaven sword, but it was unprecedentedly huge. It was as if the entire vast thousand realms had become this immortal heaven sword. It was as if the entire world had become a sword. And the tip of this sword was pointing at Lin Feng and Yujing Mountain. At this moment, Lin Feng's expression was normal. He made a hand seal with his left hand, and the Permitha Golden Bridge left the yin-yang life and death formation. The yin-yang life and death formation merged with Yujing Mountain, turning into a true mountain guarding formation. It suddenly unfolded, protecting Yujing Mountain in the center. Then, Lin Feng himself, whose body was as huge as a star, also slammed his palm on the body of Yujing Mountain that had expanded dramatically. The black and white divine light of creation appeared on Yujing Mountain. One after another, balls of light rose from the black and white sea of light, like huge bubbles rising on the surface of the sea. Within these balls of light, countless chants of the great Tao rang out. It was as if gods had awakened one after another and opened their eyes. The entire Yujing Mountain was like a celestial kingdom in heaven. It was shocking and made the primordial soul cultivators yearn for it, wishing they could throw themselves into it. And the void around Yujing Mountain continued to collapse, turning into black and white balls of air. It was as if the universe had been reopened and the yin and yang had been established. Then, the wind of earth, water, and fire flowed. After it settled down, it turned into the 8 trigrams, showing the changes of the primordial world. This earth-shattering power confronted the sword of Shu Mountain that had turned everything in the world into a sharp edge. It did not let the other party take a step forward. All the spectators were shaken. This time, it was not only the Taishu Temple's White Cloud Mountain that was moving, and not only the entire Divine Land Pass. Even the Demon Realm's Tianhuang Land was stirred, as if it had been alarmed by this unprecedented battle. Liang Pan stared in the direction of Shu Mountain. The Permitha Golden Bridge has not moved yet, and Lin Feng's own heaven-crushing sword is still there. We can't do anything. Zhu Hongwu was also focused. Right now, Shu Mountain even has a slight advantage, but they can't win quickly and are in a stalemate. In fact, Shu Mountain has already lost. The sword intent and spiritual chi accumulated by the Shu Mountain sword peak will eventually be used up, and the situation will be reversed. But even if the heaven-crushing sword and the Permitha Golden Bridge join the battle, they will at most defeat Shu Mountain. If Sword Venerable Tiangang is willing to sacrifice his life, he can still protect the immortal heaven sword. What does Lin Feng want? Before he finished, Liang Pan and Zhu Hongwu's expressions changed. The other spectators were also in an uproar. Lin Feng supported Yujing Mountain with his left hand and suddenly let go of the heaven-crushing sword with his right hand. Using a sword sacrifice method, the sword floated in the air by itself. A scabbard covered in cracks appeared in his right hand. It was the sect-returning scabbard. At the moment, the sect-returning scabbard was covered in dense blood-red cracks, as if it had come to a dead end. The heaven-crushing sword buzzed and voluntarily entered the sect-returning scabbard. But this time, it was the sect-returning scabbard that was trembling violently, as if it was genuinely afraid. Lin Feng's expression was relaxed. He gently tossed the sect-returning scabbard into the air, and when he caught it again, he was already holding the hilt of the sect-returning scabbard. With a swing of his hand, the red light on the cracks on the surface of the sect-returning scabbard suddenly burst forth. The scabbard, which had already reached its limit, instantly shattered into countless pieces. The eyes of the Shu Mountain cultivators almost popped out of their sockets, but what frightened them even more was that Lin Feng once again took out the heaven-crushing sword. The sword light swept up the fragments of the sect-returning scabbard, and then it turned into a long rainbow that flew toward Shu Mountain. The target of this blood-red rainbow was not the immortal heaven sword, but the great immortal universe sword array. As the rainbow moved forward, the thousands of fragments of the scabbard kept vibrating, trying to break away from the blood-red rainbow. But in the blink of an eye, the fragments of the scabbard, which were originally black, gradually turned blood-red. From inside to outside, they were an extremely transparent blood-red, giving off an extremely vicious aura. Sword Venerable Celestial Dipper's eyes flashed wildly, and his usually calm expression suddenly changed. He controlled the immortal heaven sword to guide the unparalleled divine sword in an attempt to intercept the blood-red rainbow, but Yujing Mountain immediately turned from defense to offense, and he did not dare to be distracted at all. The blood-red rainbow charged toward the great immortal universe sword array. At this moment, the entire sword array was one. Although the tip of the sword was aimed at Yujing Mountain, the entire sword array was like the blade of an unparalleled divine sword, and it was also extremely sturdy. The huge spirit formation suddenly activated, wanting to block the blood-red rainbow outside. But the blood-red fragments of the scabbard within the rainbow flashed, and the blood-red rainbow successfully pierced into the great immortal universe sword array. Sword Venerable Firmament's expression also changed. He controlled the ancient sword firmament to meet the blood-red rainbow. However, under Lin Feng's control, the Permetha Bridge followed closely behind the rainbow and also entered the sword array, intercepting Sword Venerable Firmament. Everyone on Shu Mountain felt an extremely ominous omen, as if a great disaster was about to befall them. Lin Feng's voice reverberated in the sky. I have never been a bloodthirsty person, but I am definitely not a weakling who can be bullied. Other than those who are bent on provoking the dead, the Shu Mountain cultivators who did not participate in the siege of Xianmen Tianzong will not be held accountable, but those who participated will definitely pay the price, Lin Feng said indifferently. Those who offend Xianmen Tianzong will be killed no matter how far away they are. Dismembering a falling stone and injuring a member of my Xianmen Tianzong, I will kill him with my sword. Since your Shu Mountain attacked my Xianmen Mountain, I will also come to visit your Shu Mountain. Since your Shu Mountain wants to break my Xianmen life and death formation, I will break your great immortal universe sword array. Since your Shu Mountain wants to steal my heaven punishing sword, I will use the heaven punishing sword to break your immortal universe. Since you owe me justice, Xianmen Tianzong, you must pay it back. If you dare to not pay it back, I will beat you up until you pay it back. He formed a sword seal with his right hand and pointed at the great immortal universe sword array. From the moment I dismembered the falling stone and left Shu Mountain with the sect-returning scabbard, came to Xianmen Tianzong, and returned to the Kiliacosm, everything was already destined. That's all there is to it. Chapter 883. Lin Feng calmly looked at the great immortal nature thousand phenomenon sword array in front of him. He formed a sword seal with his right hand and pointed lightly. The blood-colored streak of light that entered the sword formation went all the way down to the bottom of the formation, where there was a white pillar of energy that looked like a heavenly pillar. The blood-red sky-crushing sword revealed its true form and floated in the pillar of white qi. The fragments of the scabbard around it scattered in all directions and floated in the entire great immortal nature thousand phenomenon sword array. However, The most shocking thing was that the sky-crushing sword did not attack or destroy the great immortal nature thousand phenomenon sword array. Instead, it emitted a murderous aura that spread throughout the sword array. Under everyone's astonished gazes, the majestic white pillar of energy gradually turned blood-red. Impossible! Even with the sect returning scabbard's cover, if it managed to sneak into the sword formation, a mere sword would only be suppressed by the sword formation until it couldn't move. Xian Longxing's face revealed a shocked expression, and he rarely lost his composure. However, the blood-red light became brighter and brighter. It began to spread from the pillar of Qi to the entire great immortal nature thousand phenomenon sword array. The countless swords in the sword array began to vibrate violently. Clang, 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 clang. The ear-piercing sounds of metal breaking rose and fell incessantly. At first, they could be clearly distinguished one by one, but in the end, they became a deafening cacophony. The tens of thousands of swords in the great immortal nature thousand phenomenon sword array were all broken in the middle. The blades of the swords were all broken in the middle. The upper half of the blade turned into flowing light and disappeared, leaving only the lower half of the blade attached to the hilt. However, these broken swords did not show any signs of dejection or hostility toward the power that had broken them. Instead, they cheered as if they had broken free from the shackles that had bound them for many years. The tens of thousands of broken swords showed extreme hatred toward the immortal heaven sword above and the sect returning scabbard floating in the array. All the broken swords seemed to be sentient beings with thoughts and emotions. They fell into a frenzy of rage and destroyed the fragments of the sect returning scabbard floating around them, turning those fragments into ashes. After destroying the sect returning scabbard fragments, the broken swords all flashed with black light from their broken blades. The black light extended continuously and actually condensed into light blades. Every broken sword had been restored to its original state. However, the half near the tip of the sword was condensed with black light. Following that, the black light kept flickering, causing the swords, including the sword hilt, to light up and turn into black swords of light. In an instant, the entire great immortal heaven manifestation, sword formation, had turned into a world of blood-red and jet-black. Under the combined effect of the myriad of black light swords and the blood-red pillar of energy, all the rune patterns of the formation underwent an earth-shattering change. In an instant, the appearance of the formation had completely changed. The hundreds of millions of complicated rune patterns had changed beyond recognition. The array formation runes that shone with white light had already turned into a flickering black light, causing one's heart to palpitate. Monstrous hostility swept through the entire Shushan, and the heavens and the earth dimmed. Originally, seeing Mount Yujing, the bell of creation, the yin-yang life and death formation, the heaven-punishing sword, the golden Permitha bridge, and Lin Feng himself all enter battle without any means to defend against surprise attacks from the outside world, some of the people who were still restless immediately suppressed their original thoughts when they saw this astonishing change. Lin Feng looked at the completely changed sword formation below with a calm expression. Everyone in the Shushan sword sect was dumbfounded. Even swordsman Tiangang and swordsman Firmament were agitated and speechless. For a moment the entire Shushan fell into a deathly silence, but then there was a hysterical explosion. Impossible! 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 Swordsman Taiyin, who had always been gentle, was like a roaring lion. His face was distorted as he roared, "This is impossible! Absolutely impossible!" Swordsman Guanchang's eyes were dull, and he kept repeating, "How could this be? How could this be? How did he do it? How did he do it?" The scholarly swordsman Shaozi also opened his mouth wide at this moment. The great immortal heaven manifestation, sword formation of Shushan actually turned around and turned into the sword formation of the master of the celestial sect? But why is this happening? Swordsman Xiaoyang, who had always been calm, was trembling all over. It doesn't make sense. Even if he used the sect-returning scabbard fragment to attack the sword formation, even if he could destroy it and break it, how could he turn the great immortal heaven manifestation, sword formation of Shushan into his own in an instant? The Shushan sword cultivators had always been arrogant, but if someone could break the great immortal heaven manifestation sword formation, although they were unhappy, they would not deny it. Because someone had actually done it. That was the greatest disaster in the history of the Shushan sword sect before today. During a war between the two worlds in the Middle Era, the Extreme Emperor's Divine Abyss, one of the three strongest Saint Emperors in the history of the demon race, had once completely broken through the great immortal heavens manifestation sword formation and killed the founder of Mount Shu, sword ancestor Rin Chongmei. But Jihuang Xinyuan had only broken the formation by force. How could he have seized control of the great immortal heaven manifestation sword formation in an instant like today? Especially when Lin Feng and the sky-crushing sword had seized control of the great immortal heaven manifestation sword formation from their archenemy of the Shushan sword path. What was most difficult for them to accept was that they did not even understand how Lin Feng had done it. In the process of seizing control, the tens of thousands of swords that had originally prostrated themselves under the immortal heavenly sword and followed its lead had turned to the sky-crushing sword without hesitation. They had abandoned the immortal heavenly sword and Shushan's sword as if they were worn-out shoes and had even turned to look at them as enemies. This made them feel depressed and at a loss. Everything in the past seemed to have become fake at this moment. The entire Shushan sword sect was filled with wails as they looked at what was happening in front of them in disbelief. The Shushan sword cultivators with low levels of cultivation only had confusion and fear in their eyes. They did not know what to do and felt as if something in their minds had fallen to the ground and shattered. As for the Yuanying sword cultivators who had reached the nascent soul realm, they were shaking their heads in pain. They felt as if their worldview had collapsed and the world around them had become unreal, as if they were in a nightmare. The Yuanying sword cultivators could not stop their Yuanying from leaving their bodies. The Yuanying sword cultivators' bodies were dim and filled with terrifying cracks like broken porcelain. Some nascent soul sword cultivators' bodies were constantly changing between their nascent soul incarnations and human forms and were almost out of control. Xian Longxing's complexion was similarly ashen. The light in his eyes flickered incessantly. It had already been countless years, and he had never felt like he was today. He felt as if he couldn't control his state of mind, and many distracting thoughts came one after another. Unexpectedly, a thought popped up in his mind. If junior brother Jie were to see this scene, I'm afraid that his originally unstable heart of the sword would completely shatter. His body suddenly trembled as his eyes moved back and forth between the sky-crushing sword, Lin Feng, and the immortal heaven sword before finally stopping on the sky-crushing sword. Could it be? Could it be? But how is this possible? While Shushan was in chaos, a voice suddenly came from the huge and vicious sword formation. Kill. Tian. The voice paused between each word. It was cold and had a slightly cold metallic texture, but it was the pleasant voice of a young girl. After these two words there was no other sound. The huge sword formation below was filled with vicious energy. The huge sword formation with a blood-red center and a black periphery was right below sword sovereign Tiangang and the immortal heaven sword. Originally, the immortal heaven sword was still gathering the sword energy from the great immortal universe sword formation. However, at this moment, it was wrapped up by the monstrous vicious energy. The sword formation below and Jade Jing Mountain firmly held the immortal heaven sword in place. Now, even if Sword Sovereign Tiangang and everyone on Shushan sacrificed their lives, they would not be able to let the immortal heaven sword escape. The Permitha Bridge rushed out of the sky-crushing sword formation and landed above Jade Jing Mountain. Together with Jade Jing Mountain, the Bell of Creation, and the Yin-Yang Life and Death formation, It suppressed sword sovereign Tiangang and the immortal heaven sword. Without the power of the great immortal universe sword formation, the main peak of Shu Mountain had not run out of sword intent and sword energy. Although sword sovereign firmament, Xian Longxing, and other great sword cultivators continued to help, Shu Mountain and the immortal heaven sword were inevitably at a disadvantage. Lin Feng's figure flashed and appeared inside the sky-crushing sword formation. He reached out and grabbed the hilt of the sky-crushing sword. His expression was calm. Shu Mountain Sword Sect, receive my sky-crushing sword formation. Not only the black and white divine light of creation, but also Lin Feng's own divine art and dharma power were all turned into sky-crushing sword energy and merged with the sky-crushing sword. His mind was connected to the treasures of Jade Jing Mountain. Rays of light descended and strengthened the sky-crushing sword. As the tip of the sword moved, the sky-crushing sword formation turned into a vast expanse of black light that engulfed the world. The hostility of the entire vast thousand worlds condensed like never before, turning into a peerless sword that could destroy the world and pointed directly at the immortal heaven sword. In the spiritual senses of the spectators, they were in a trance. The huge white jade sword that the entire world had turned into disappeared and was replaced by an equally huge blood-red sword. For a moment they felt as if the entire world had turned into this blood-red sword. The tip of the sword was pointing at the immortal heaven sword, which had nowhere to retreat to. Sword Sovereign Firmament closed his eyes and slowly opened them again. His entire body turned into a stream of light and merged with the immortal heaven sword. He and the sword became one, activating the last sword energy contained in the main peak of Shu Mountain to meet the attack. At this moment, all the swords in the world changed sides and merged into the vast hostility of the world. Together, they attacked the supreme swordsman of the past, the Supreme Emperor. In the Battle of West Hill, when the immortal heaven sword appeared, it was like the Emperor who controlled all the swords in the world. All the land in the world belonged to the Emperor. When the Emperor gave an order, all the subjects would obey. In front of him, all the existences that could be called swords in the divine land had to bow their heads. There was only one exception. It was the sky-crushing sword. At that time, the sky-crushing sword was like a traitor, arrogantly and decisively facing the high and mighty immortal heaven sword. Was it a traitor, or was it only pure when the entire world was dirty? Even when the entire world was my enemy, I had nothing to fear. The majesty of the Emperor was not to be feared, and the criticism of the masses was not to be feared either. But today, the situation was completely reversed. The rolling tide swept across. All the swords that had been subdued in the past rose up. Wherever the sky-crushing sword went, all the swords in the world would obey, wanting to overthrow the high and mighty Emperor of the past. The blood-red sword formed by the world suddenly slashed at the immortal heaven sword. The strong light spread in all directions, covering all directions. All the spectators could see nothing but endless sword light in their divine senses. Chapter 884. The sword radiance was endless, covering the sky and covering the earth. All the spectators felt a stinging pain in their divine senses and didn't dare to continue watching. Tao Master Thundercloud, Longevity Heavenly Spear, and the others who were close to the battle all retreated quickly to avoid being affected by the collision. A large amount of the realm power between heaven and earth collapsed. Huge, twisted, chaotic cracks spread out like a dense spider web, emitting dazzling brilliance. It was as if a world of creation had completely collapsed and disintegrated into nothingness. After a long time, the sword radiance dissipated. Everyone looked carefully and held their breath. Although they had vaguely guessed it, they were still shocked to see it with their own eyes. Sword Master Heavenly Dipper stood alone in the void. There were several severe wounds on his body and countless great Tao essence scattered. He was seriously injured. But the biggest change compared to before was that there was a faint lethargy on his body, which had never been seen before. It was as if a person had suddenly aged, or as if a cold, sharp sword had gradually decayed and lost its sharpness. He was still holding the divine heaven sword in his hand, but the white jade sword that had been bowed to by thousands of swords in the past was now only half left. The divine heaven sword, was broken. The former emperor of swords was cut in half by another divine sword. The first half of the sword where the sword tip was disappeared, completely vanishing from the world, turning into nothingness, no longer existing. Everything calmed down. The vast divine land was silent for a moment. But soon, a clear sword chime sounded in the surroundings. The sword chime came from the gate of the heavenly sword sect. Then, there seemed to be a bright sword radiance shining in the mountain. It wasn't a real sword radiance. It seemed to be flickering in people's divine senses. But the sword radiance grew brighter and brighter, emitting a high-spirited aura. Sword Master Heavenly Dipper, Old Sword Immortal, and the other sword cultivators drew their swords and held them in front of their chests. They said respectfully in the direction of Shu Mountain, "Thank you, Master of the Taoist sect, for inviting the immortal heaven to perish with a sword from beyond the heavens." Sword Master Heavenly Dipper roared and manifested his void return Dharma form. Endless great Tao entered his body from the sky. The surging sword radiance pierced through the sky and gradually condensed into a light shadow in the shape of a fruit. At the gate of the Thunderbolt Sword sect, there was also illusory sword radiance and sword intent. The two sword cultivators also held their swords in front of their chests and charged in the direction of Shu Mountain. Master of the Taoist sect, for inviting the immortal heaven to perish with a sword from beyond the heavens. Sword Venerable Flowing Light, who was on Yujing Mountain, Sword Venerable Brilliant of the Sun and Moon Sword sect, Sword Venerable Constellation of the Constellation Sword sect, and Sword Venerable of the Great Wilderness of the Wilderness of the Wilderness of the Sword sect, almost at the same time, made the same action. Master of the Taoist sect, for inviting the immortal heaven to perish with a sword from beyond the heavens. Even the great sword cultivators of the Songhai Sword sect, such as Venerable Sword Emerald Wave and Venerable Sword Listener, who were guarding the mountain gate, had complicated expressions on their faces. They held their swords in front of their chests and faced Mount Shu. "Thank you, Master of the Celestial Sect of Wonders. With a sword from beyond the heavens, I invite the celestial realm to perish." On Yujing Mountain, beside Wang Lin, the Xiantian God sealing flag fluttered in the wind. Two light shadows of essence soul cultivators appeared on the flag. One was Master of the Songhai Sword sect, the other was Master of the Blaze Sword sect, the other was Master of the Blaze Sword sect. The two sighed at the same time. Master of the Taoist sect, for inviting the immortal heaven to perish with a sword from beyond the heavens. In the sky above Shu Mountain, countless lights flickered, disappeared, and then flickered again. The cycle repeated, as if there were countless streams of light surging between heaven and earth. There were many invisible chains breaking. Resonating with it, the sound of swords humming and sword radiance filled every part of the divine land. The sword humming became louder and the sword radiance became brighter and brighter, together creating a heavenly phenomenon. In the void, beside Master of the Dipper Sword, Master of the Firmament Sword gradually appeared. He was also heavily injured. With a wave of his hand, a group of Shu Mountain sword cultivators appeared in a sword realm. Everyone stared at the broken immortal heaven sword, dumbfounded as if they were petrified. Almost all the swords that the Shu Mountain sword cultivators carried with them were broken, with only half of them remaining. Only Master of the Dipper Sword, Master of the Firmament Sword, and Xian Longxing looked at the strange phenomenon in the sky above them in a daze. Then, they looked down together. There, a terrifying will had officially awakened. The entire world was shaking. There was even a faint glow of the great Tao in the space, as if it was trembling for this existence that had truly come into being. In the center of the huge sky punishing sword formation, Lin Feng stood calmly. He raised a long sword in his right hand and pointed it at the sky. The sky punishing sword in his hand had finally shed the last bit of rust. It had been completely honed. A peerless divine sword had finally truly descended into this vast thousand domains. On Jade Capital Mountain, the huge sword box that had originally belonged to the sky punishing sword shattered and turned into ashes. In the dark Heaven-Time Light Cave, the sloppy old man, who did not care about anything and was playing chess by himself, suddenly trembled. The chess piece in his hand fell onto the chessboard, messing up the game. The old man looked in the direction of the dark Heaven-Time Light Cave and fell into a long daze. At this moment, the originally blood-red blade of the sky punishing sword no longer had any luster. The mournful blood-red light had dissipated, leaving only the surface of the blade with a chaotic and blurry color. It was as if everything had come to an end and creation had come to an end, turning into nothingness. It was like the home of all things. Everything returned to nirvana. Time, space, matter, spiritual chi, and spirit were all annihilated without a trace. It was like the sword of the end, the sword of destruction. Before it, all things were being destroyed. All things had come to an end. The terrifying sword will and the aura of the artistic conception made everyone shudder. This is like a creation magic treasure, but it is not the creation magic treasure that the great heaven world knows about. There is a magical technique that contains the power of destruction. It can be called a Tao-destroying technique, but it is only a trace. This sword can be said to be a true Tao annihilation sword. Although this sword has been completely sharpened, it seems that there is still a possibility of improvement. Lin Feng raised the sword. The vicious aura of heaven and earth was the tip, soaring into the sky like a pillar of air. At the center of the pillar of air, the sky was instantly torn open. Streams of air spiraled like a huge whirlpool. The whirlpool rapidly expanded into the surroundings, vaguely occupying the entire sky. The entire great heaven world was shaking slightly. The creation magic treasure closest to the sky punishing sword, the Permitha Bridge, was shaking non-stop. Countless images appeared, and rays of golden light fell. A grand will was manifested from it, but it revealed a deep fear towards the sky punishing sword. At the border of the great Zhou Empire and the great Qin Empire, the three great creation magic treasures, the immortal dragon city, the grand imperial palace, and the great celestial wheel, also shook at the same time. The immortal dragon city turned into a flowing river of time, shining brightly and spanning across the sky. There seemed to be countless people standing on the river, supporting the great wall together. In the middle of the crowd, the spirit of Emperor Qin was faintly discernible. The wills of the many people gathered together to form a grand will. That was the will of the immortal dragon city. However, at this moment, the immortal dragon city also revealed a sense of fear towards the sword of rebirth in the distance. The magic treasure spirit of the creation magic treasure was usually in harmony with the heaven and earth. It was like the will of creation, and it wouldn't be revealed easily. However, at this moment, not only the immortal dragon city and the Permitha Bridge, but also the grand imperial palace and the great celestial wheel revealed an indistinct but incomparably huge will. They stared at the divine sword that gathered the vicious aura of heaven and earth with vigilance and fear. In a dimensional realm, the king of the underworld, who looked like a 2- or 3-year-old child, expressionlessly looked at the book of life and death in his hand, which was constantly flipping pages. He could feel the sense of fear coming from the book of life and death. In the distant, desolate, ancient sea of stars, there seemed to be a wave of fluctuation. It seemed that the will of creation had awakened. The boundaries of the southern wasteland suddenly collapsed, and a crack appeared in the netherworld sea. Thousands of calamities and tribulations wreaked havoc in the netherworld sea. There seemed to be a giant opening his eyes and gazing in the direction of Mount Shu. In the Divine Land, above the White Cloud Mountain where the Taishu Temple was located, the sea of white clouds that surrounded the mountain all year round suddenly dispersed, and a light and shadow appeared on the mountain peak. There was nothing else in the light and shadow except for a circular existence that looked like the surface of a mirror. As soon as the mirror light appeared, the entire Divine Land seemed to have stopped. Everything and everyone fell into a state of stillness. Their own image appeared on the mirror, but it wasn't moving. It was like a static picture scroll. Lin Feng held the heaven-punishing sword in his hand. His gaze pierced through the endless void and calmly looked at the round mirror on the top of the White Cloud Mountain. The sword edge formed by the evil aura of heaven and earth was illuminated by the mirror light and showed signs of disintegration. However, the chaotic and blurry sword light on the heaven-punishing sword changed direction, and the world-destroying sword will soared into the sky. The heaven and earth were the sword, and the evil aura was the tip. That terrifying sword will condensed again. A long sigh came from the void. Master of the Celestial Sect, why did you have to do this? On the top of the White Cloud Mountain, the current head of the Taishu Temple, Yen Nanlai, looked at Lin Feng with a complicated expression on his face. The mirror light and the sword will clashed. Suddenly, invisible bands of light appeared on the surface of the boundless universe, as if the spirit sea had descended. The light disappeared in a flash. Several figures landed on the top of the White Cloud Mountain and came to Yen Nanlai's side. It was Lord Tai and the others who had finally broken free from the suppression of the spirit sea. Everyone's expression was bright and dark, and their gazes were complicated. Shoichi Dashin stared at the heaven-punishing sword in Lin Feng's hand. This ominous sword has finally been completely born. It's not fate, but it's better than fate. Although the damage to the Haotian mirror has yet to recover, this is the first magic treasure in the Tianyuan world that dares to face the Haotian mirror directly. Lord Tai closed his eyes and also looked at the heaven-punishing sword. Then, his gaze swept across Yujing Mountain, the Bell of Fate, the Golden Permitha Bridge, and the yin and yang formation of life and death. Finally, it stopped on Lin Feng, and he also sighed. Master of the Celestial Sect, why did you have to do this? Lin Feng calmly met the eyes of the big shots of the Void Temple, indifferently saying, even though I don't completely agree with your sect's conduct in the vast divine continent, but your sect, no matter if it's the conservative or radical faction, all resolutely resist the demon race and protect the vast divine continent, I express my appreciation. However, blindly suppressing conflicts will not solve them. When they are suppressed to the extreme, they will only explode more violently and cause more trouble in the future. Instead, it will damage the overall situation. Respecting the overall situation does not mean that the overall situation can protect the weak. The world's justice is the true overall situation. Justice is in the hearts of the people, and the hearts of the people are the foundation of the overall situation. Today the Zhu family owes me, Xianmen Tianzong, justice. I will naturally get it back. Golden Cicada kidnapped my grand disciple. Once this is over, the first thing I will do is go to the vast land of infinite wasteland to find trouble with him. If your sect insists that my killing and capturing of the weak today has damaged the strength of the human race, then it's simple, Lin Feng said lightly. When I go to the vast land of infinite wasteland, I will just kill more great demons. Chapter 885. Lin Feng looked at Taiwan Master and the others at the top of White Cloud Mountain. Heaven and earth fell into silence. After a long time, Taiwan Master slowly shook his head. Master of Xianmen's sect, your sword is very ominous. Its sword intent is to destroy and slaughter everything. If it continues to improve, it will be the real destruction of the world. I'm afraid you will also be hurt. Lin Feng smiled faintly. Taiwan Master, thank you for worrying too much. I know my sword well. After saying this, Lin Feng loosened his right hand and let go of the sky-crushing sword. With a thought, the sky-crushing sword rose up. The sky-crushing sword formation under his feet flashed. Thousands of swords flew out and left the sword formation. Like a rain of flowers, they scattered among the peaks of Mount Shu below. These swords were now completely restored to their original state, but the luster on the blades was different from before. Some of the swords fell directly into the mountains and rivers, while most of them turned into streams of light and scattered in all directions. The blood-red pillar of Qi in the center of the sky-crushing sword formation had disappeared and completely integrated into the sword formation. The huge sword formation flashed with black sword light, and its murderous aura was shocking. There was no longer a single black sword light in the sword formation. Instead, the murderous aura of heaven and earth gathered and turned into thousands of black swords of Qi, threatening the divine land. The river of time that was originally wrapped around Yujing Mountain fell down and once again transformed into the appearance of the Bell of Creation. A boy about 5 or 6 years old stood beside the Bell of Creation and bowed towards Lin Feng. "Creation greets Master," Lin Feng said. "You can continue to temper the sky-crushing sword with this sword formation. Follow my secret method. In the future, you and the sword formation can advance together with the sky-crushing sword." The Fate Creation boy looked at the murderous sky-crushing sword with some fear. He stuck out his tongue and said, "As you command, old master." The sky-crushing sword shook a little. A shadow flashed beside the sword and gradually turned into a woman. It was Xianli. But the current Xianli had changed a little compared to her 17 or 18 years old appearance. She was still beautiful and even more elegant, but she looked older than 20 years old. She was 22 or 23 years old. His hair, which was originally half black and half white, didn't seem to have changed at first glance, but if one were to look closely, they would feel that it was like the blade of the heaven-punishing sword, chaotic and blurry, mysterious and unfathomable. Xian Li's long-cherished wish had been fulfilled by cutting the immortal heaven sword. She seemed to be in good spirits, but her beautiful face was still expressionless. She was like a cold and exquisite puppet. Only when she looked at Lin Feng did her eyes move slightly, as if there was a light flickering in them. Lin Feng smiled and flicked his finger on the blade of the Sky Destroyer. A soft sound came from the blade, shaking the void. "Cultivate well." Xianli pursed her lips and nodded stiffly. She reached out and grabbed the Sky Destroyer sword. Lin Feng clapped his hands lightly, and the huge Sky Destroyer sword formation below rose. Fate Creation Boy and the Bell of Fate combined and manifested the first phenomenon, the Life Creation Gate. The pitch-black gate opened, and a vast white Qi of creation gushed out from it. It blended with the black Qi rising from the Sky Destroyer sword formation and formed a long Qi pillar. The black and white Qi pillar wrapped around Xianli and the Sky Destroyer sword. Xianli sat cross-legged in the middle of the two Qi pillars, and the Sky Destroyer sword was placed horizontally on her knees. Slowly, she closed her eyes. Lin Feng's hands kept changing the Dharma seals, and streams of Dharma power were injected into the black and white Qi pillar. Slowly, the black and white Qi pillar rose into the sky. The sky opened, revealing the dark void. Slowly, the black and white Qi pillar rose into the void and disappeared. Lin Feng looked at everyone in Taishu Temple and said calmly, "Previously, Dao Lord Qing Yi had projected himself to my Xianmen Tianzong for a short period of time. Your Sex Haotian mirror seems to be paying attention to other places. I suppose there's some movement in Heaven Wasteland?" Back then, Heaven Enchantress and Golden Rock had obtained a portion of Yudu Minghua in Cloud Forest Realm. If they could gain the experience of Yu Huang's Celestial Sea, they might sense the strange changes that your sect and I experienced, and thus incite the demons to create chaos. I'll be making a trip to Heaven Wasteland soon. There might be a chance for us to work together. Although he had used the Heaven Punishment Sword formation and the Bell of Fate to seal the Heaven Punishment Sword, it was to further strengthen the Heaven Punishment Sword, the Bell of Fate, and the Heaven Punishment Sword formation. The temporary dormancy was for long-term progress in the future. If there was a need, he could just unseal it in advance. At most, he wouldn't be able to do everything, and he would have to start all over again. After saying that, Lin Feng's feet paused slightly, and he was already on Jade Capital Mountain. He put away the Permitha Golden Bridge, and the Life and Death Formation, and the mysterious Heaven Treasure Tree at the top of the mountain spread its branches and leaves, breaking through the void and escaping inside. Lin Feng didn't make things difficult for the people of Shu Mountain. Although Sword Venerable Guanchong, Sword Venerable Shaozi, and Sword Venerable Taiying had also participated in the siege of Xianmen Tianzong, they were already half-crippled by Xiao Yan and Shi Tianhao, so Lin Feng wasn't interested in continuing to bicker with them. The people of Shu Mountain were either at a loss, fearful, or hateful as they watched Lin Feng and Jade Capital Mountain disappear, but they didn't dare to say anything. There were those who would rather die in glory than live in dishonor. However, they saw that the three big shots of their sect were all in a daze, and they had no intention of fighting to the death with Lin Feng. Xian Longxing, Sword Venerable Tiangang, and Sword Venerable Firmament all had complicated expressions at this moment. They looked at the broken immortal heaven sword in silence. Although all of them were seriously injured, they didn't cower in fear. Instead, their expressions were very strange. They seemed to be crying and laughing at the same time, and they seemed to be in a daze and at the same time enlightened. All of them were deep in thought. The turbulent Shu Mountain had disappeared at this moment, leaving behind only loneliness. At the top of White Cloud Mountain, the people of Taishu Temple watched the sky-crushing sword, Lin Feng, and Jade Capital Mountain disappear into the void one after another. None of them spoke. The circular mirror above the top of the mountain had already disappeared, and the clouds around White Cloud Mountain thickened once again, covering the entire mountain and making no sound at all. Among the white clouds, Shoichi Dashin stood at the top of the mountain and said calmly, "Let's first stabilize the situation in Tianhuang and Vast Land before we discuss in detail." Grand One's Supremacy sighed softly, nodded, and disappeared from the top of the mountain with Shoichi Dashin. Yan Nanlai's body didn't move, but his hands changed hand seals continuously. On White Cloud Mountain, a faintly discernible mirror light seemed to have passed through the boundary between the two worlds and was currently shining on a certain place in Tianhuang and Vast Land. As Yan Nanlai moved, the mirror light became brighter, and its aura became more profound. The power of the boundary became thinner, but it didn't really collapse, and the mirror light passed through it. Xianlin Taoist and Kai Fengzhou stepped forward together. The formation-breaking drum and the void yin-yang bell also appeared in front of them, and the two people and two treasures disappeared together. Yun Yuanjin, Dao Venerable Yuan, and Lin Daohan continued to stay at the top of White Cloud Mountain, standing together with Yan Nanlai. Everyone was silent. After a long time, the bright mirror light gradually calmed down a little. Grand One's Supremacy's figure reappeared at the top of White Cloud Mountain. He gently flicked his finger at the bright mirror light, and the mirror light immediately split into many rays of light that escaped into the void. The next moment, many light figures appeared in front of Grand One's Supremacy and the others. They weren't real people, but dermic power projections. Among the three people in front, one was Shoichi Dashin, who had just left with Grand One's Supremacy, the other was a cold girl who looked only 13 or 14 years old, and the last was a handsome young man who looked about 20 years old. The latter two were the other two of the four elders of Great Void, Dao Venerable Qing Yi and Dao Venerable Xian Yi. Shoichi Dashin and Dao Venerable Qing Yi's original bodies were currently in Tianhuang and Vast Land. Dao Venerable Xian Yi had just experienced the degeneration tribulation and was recuperating in seclusion. There were a few people behind Shoichi Dashin and the other two. The person on the far right was a child with a serene expression and eyes that seemed to have seen the vicissitudes of life. He was Quang Heng, who hadn't shown himself since the Battle of West Hill City. Like Tao Venerable Xian Yi, he had just experienced a degeneration tribulation and was recuperating. Beside Kuang Heng were Xianlin Taoist and Kai Fengzhou, who had just gone to Tianhuang and vast land with him. There were two other people. One was a middle-aged man in white with a calm expression. He was another member of Taishu Temple's Grand Supreme Elders Association, a conservative bigshot, Fu Yunkong. The other person looked to be a young man that was in high spirits and carried a slightly arrogant aura. He was a member of the Supreme Elder Association of the Void Temple along with Fu Yunkong, Lord Xianlin, and the others, a big shot of the radical faction, Wu Mingqi. Previously, he and Fu Yunkong had been guarding Tianhuang and vast land together. Beside them stood a light shadow of an old man who looked vaguely agitated. He was another conservative Grand Supreme Elder, Tao Venerable Qing Ning, the top alchemist of Taishu Temple. He had been refining a furnace of important elixirs in seclusion and didn't even have time to come out of seclusion due to the incident in Tianhuang and vast land. Just when he had some free time, he was directly summoned by the Haotian mirror's dermic projection. Two tall figures appeared beside Tao Venerable Qing Ning. They were not dermic projections, but real people. One was a man and the other was a woman. However, although they were in human form, they had two dragon horns on their forehead. The leaders of Taishu Temple's Grand Supreme Dragon Pool, Black-Scale Dragon King and Huiyun Dragon King, were conservative and radical respectively. In addition to Temple Master Yen Nanlai, Tao Venerable Tai, Shoichi Dashin, Tao Venerable Qingyi, Tao Venerable Xian, Kuang Heng, Xianlin Taoist, Wu Mingqi, Fu Yunkong, Yun Yuanjin, Tao Venerable Yuan, Kai Fengzhou, and Tao Venerable Qing Ning formed the Grand Supreme Elders Association of Taishu Temple. Black-Scale Dragon King, Huiyun Dragon King, and Lin Daohan had the right to listen in. Tao Venerable Qing Ning frowned and asked, "Uncle Tai, why do you want to hold another meeting? Is the exploration of the spiritual sea blocked?" Lin Daohan succinctly and clearly told him what had happened in the spiritual sea, the incident at Yujing Mountain, and the battle on Mount Shu. After he finished, Yen Nanlai flicked his finger at the Haotian mirror. A ball of light and shadow appeared and completely replayed the entire battle after Lin Feng returned to the infinite Kiliacosm. All of a sudden, those who didn't know what was going on fell silent. Shoichi Dashin's Dharma power projection looked around and said calmly, "Today, Xianmen Tianzong has finally become powerful." Tao Venerable Xian Yi looked at the light and shadow reflected in the Haotian mirror and said slowly, "The master of Xianmen Tianzong himself, Yujing Mountain, the yin and yang life and death formation, the ominous sword that was finally completely cast, the sword formation that he used for his own use, and the Dharma treasure that proved the way. Among all the beings who have entered the ancient era, I'm afraid that only the Haotian mirror in its perfect state, Yudu of the heavenly ocean, the Zhenho that was killed after challenging the throne of Yudu of the heavenly ocean, and senior brother Tai, who was uninjured 4,600 years ago, can defeat him. If he can survive the calamity of creation and the collapse of the great Tao, or if his sword and bell improve greatly again, I'm afraid he'll really become another Yudu of the heavenly ocean." Shoichi Dashin said indifferently, "Even with his current strength, before the Haotian mirror returns to its peak, we won't be able to control him and Xianmen Tianzong anymore unless we start an all-out war. And if they started an all-out war, it would most likely result in one death and one injury, or both sides would suffer heavy losses." Everyone in the Taishu Temple fell silent for a moment, not saying a word. It had been far too long. It had been many years since a human force that could compete with the Taishu Temple on its own had appeared. But today there was finally a chess piece that jumped out of the chessboard and transformed into a chess player that was worthy of attention, standing in front of the Taishu Temple. From now on, the situation in the Divine Land would no longer be the same. Chapter 886. Everyone in the Taishu Temple turned to look at Taoist Lord Tai. Taoist Lord Tai turned his head to look at Shoichi Dashin and the others. He sighed again and did not say much. He said simply, "There are ways to defeat him, but it will be very difficult to kill him. We can only try to trap him. I can use the collapse of the great Tao to die with him." Hearing this, none of the big shots in the Taishu temple looked happy. Instead, their expressions darkened. Slowly, Taoist Lord Tai said, "I hope he is not another king of the underworld, another ruthless emperor, or another primordial demon master." Taoist Lord Qing Yi said calmly, "No one can guarantee that. It would be fine if we fight on White Cloud Mountain. But if we fight outside of White Cloud Mountain, unless the Haotian mirror is complete, we will have to send many people to trap him." Kai Fengzhou said, "But in that case, the master of the celestial sect will still have the power to fight back. More than half of the people we trap will die with him." Kuang Hing said calmly, "The Haotian mirror is complete. We don't need Uncle Taoist Lord Tai to die with us." Yun Yuanjin sighed. "It will take time for the Haotian mirror to return to its peak. The master of the celestial sect will also need time to refine his heaven-punishing sword again. I'm afraid he did it to deal with the Haotian mirror of our temple." Wu Mingqi frowned. "This person's ambition is not small. Let's see who is faster." A strange light flashed in his eyes. His pupils seemed to reflect the thousands of calamities in the netherworld ocean. Kai Fengzhou looked at Wu Mingqi and did not say anything. The two of them were from the same sect. They were both descendants of Wen Qiyang, the head of the Great Void Four. Unfortunately, they had different stances. One was conservative and the other was radical. Kai Fengzhou said, "Once the Haotian mirror is used, the recovery will be delayed." Tao Master Qing Ning, who was also a conservative, calmly said, "Let's give the master of the celestial sect a chance to unsheathe his sword. Just make sure that it's used against the demon clan." Kai Fengzhou sighed and said, "The situation in the divine land will be different from now on." Kuang Hing said calmly, "Another heavenly gate. We will deal with it the same way our ancestors dealt with the heavenly gate. At that time, our Taishu temple was in an unprecedented downturn. Now, the situation is much better." Fu Yunkong remained silent for a while, then said, "No one can guarantee that the master of the Xian Gate won't be another ruthless king, but it doesn't mean that he will definitely become the enemy of our divine land. From what I've seen, this man is cruel and tough, but he is completely different from the likes of the king of the underworld, the ruthless king, and the original devil master. If this man succeeds in the future, he may become another pillar of the human clan." Silently, Yen Nanlai said, "Our temple follows the teachings of our ancestors. Our priority is to support the divine land. Even if we exercise checks and balances, it is only a means, not the end. If the master of the Xian Gate rises and becomes stronger than us, he will be able to protect the vast 1,000 domains and fight against the demon clan. Isn't that a good thing?" His eyes swept across Kuang Heng, Xianlin Taoist, and Wu Mingqi. Silently, Kuang Heng and the other two looked at him calmly, not backing down. On the contrary, Tao Master Yuan, who belonged to the same conservative camp as him and Fu Yunkong, said coldly, "It is too early to say these things. Our Taishu temple has been through the test of time since ancient times. As for the master of the Xian Gate, it remains to be seen." Yen Nanlai and Fu Yunkong nodded and said, "That is true. Let's see the master of the Xian Gate's actions and results in this trip to Infinite Wasteland." Tao Master Tai closed his eyes and said with a gentle expression, "If there are any bad signs, I will sacrifice myself and strike like lightning. Otherwise, if things continue to develop, we will no longer be able to control them." Everyone nodded. The figures of the people who had come with their spiritual power gradually disappeared from the top of the mountain. White Cloud Mountain returned to peace and silence. At this moment, on Yujing Mountain, Lin Feng strolled leisurely on the top of the mountain with his hands behind his back. He walked to the mysterious sky treasure tree, where everyone bowed to him. Welcome back, Master. Welcome back, Sect Master. Welcome back, Master of the Xian Gate. After Swordsman Flowing Light bowed to Lin Feng, he bowed even more seriously and solemnly. He repeated what he had said before: "Thank you, Master of the Xian Gate, for inviting the immortal sky to perish with a sword from beyond the heavens." Lin Feng did not wait for him to bow and gave him a slight push, stopping his movements. He smiled faintly and said, "I sent the immortal sky to perish to settle the grudge between me and Shushan. You don't have to thank me." Lin Feng looked at him and saw that there was a strange flowing light faintly flickering on Swordsman Flowing Light's body. His sword will was bursting. If he sensed it carefully, he would discover that it was the Cellerita's sword sex instant flowing light sword way, but compared to before, it was a level higher. At this moment, his sword way had improved. Although it was just a bud and needed to be carefully analyzed and comprehended, he could already see that it was not the slightest bit weaker than Shushan's Shaozi sword tool. In fact, it was even stronger than before. Moreover, it was not like before where he could not find a path. A clear path of great Tao had appeared in front of him, and there was still profound potential to be unearthed in the future. Swordsman Flowing Light's expression was also a little complicated. He turned to look at the mysterious sky god sealing banner that Wang Lin was controlling. Light and shadow swayed on the surface of the banner, and two figures appeared. These two figures had lifeless expressions at this moment. They were Shushan's Swordsman Little Shang and Swordsman Fierce Li. Swordsman Little Shang was not as ostentatious and domineering as he was in the past, and Swordsman Fierce Li was no longer cold and murderous. At this moment their expressions were incomparably complicated. The light in their eyes flickered, as if it could be extinguished at any moment. The images of Swordsman Vast Sea and Swordsman Fierce Fire also appeared on the mysterious sky god sealing banner. The two of them cultivated the Vast Sea sword way and the Raging Inferno sword way respectively. Just like Swordsman Flowing Light's instant flowing light sword way, they faintly felt that the path ahead of them had suddenly become clear. Swordsman Fierce Fire was silent, while Swordsman Vast Sea sighed softly. In the past, I only felt that I was powerless against the Shushan Immortal Sky Sword, but I didn't know the reason. It was only in the instant when the Immortal Sky perished that I understood what was going on. Swordsman Flowing Light gazed at Swordsman Little Shang, shook his head, and sighed. It's the same for everyone, nowadays. Most of the sword Daos in the world originated from Shushan, or perhaps they studied the swords of Shushan when they were first established. As a result, they took fewer detours, but in the end, they cut off their own future, and can no longer turn back. Emperor of Swords, Emperor of Swords. Which emperor doesn't impose harsh taxes? Which emperor allows his subjects to proclaim themselves kings and start their own business? The Immortal Sky Sword has been spreading its sword will since it was still in its embryonic stage. Then, it gathered the sword will of all the swords in the world that were born because of it, forming a cycle. It established the opportunity to achieve creation, and finally, it was completely refined. Our ancestors took the bait willingly. Once they entered the cycle, they couldn't get out. Between us and Shushan, it's hard to tell if it's a favor or a grudge. Hearing this, Lin Feng did not say anything, not willing to take the bait and wanting to walk on their own. Other than the already strong few like the Void Temple and Elysium, the majority of them have been dissolved into nothingness by Shushan. Of the countless swords in the great immortal heavens, thousand phenomenon sword formation, only a small portion are Shushan's. Rather than calling it a sword array, it was more like a sword prison or a sword tomb. The ancient heavenly gate and the grand Jiutian divine sword died early, while the Taishu Temple's sword Daos originated from its own great Tao of the Great Void, which had high requirements for aptitude and was not universal. Under this cycle, the Immortal Sky Sword and Immortal Heaven Sword became stronger and stronger. After the chaotic Middle Era successfully passed the initial primitive accumulation stage, the position of the Emperor of Swords gradually became unshakable, and more people took the bait willingly. As a result, almost all the swords circulating in the Divine Land originated from the immortal Sky Sword. Venerable Flowing Light sighed. Sect Leader Lin, perhaps you didn't mean to, but you used your sword to destroy the immortal heaven and completely cut off the immortal heaven sword chi. Otherwise, as long as the sword intent from the immortal heaven sword chi in the world doesn't dissipate, the immortal sky sword will eventually be completed, and we can only be trapped in this cycle forever. Although Shushan and the immortal heaven sword chi still exist, without the immortal sky sword, we finally have hope of Dao integration and can finally improve our sword Dao. The blocked path in the past is now open again. It's all because of your kindness. Lin Feng shook his head. There's no need to say more. We have to walk our own path. On the other hand, I will remember your help. Venerable Flowing Light shook his head. Compared to your kindness, it's nothing. Our sects have always been in contact, so it's only right for me to help. Xiao Yin walked up and said, Master, Mr. Twin Peaks of the Peak was seriously injured while removing the falling rocks for Shushan. You have already killed the enemy, so please help Mr. Twin Peaks of the Peak. Monk Dade was also injured while removing the falling rocks, and he has been fighting with the enemy with his injuries. Lin Feng pointed a finger at the Two Poles Sky Peak. The Two Poles Sky Peak immediately circulated with light. Next, after giving Zen Master Dade a helping hand, Lin Feng turned his head and smiled towards Xiao Yin. You're also not lightly injured. Xiao Yin laughed. Don't laugh at me, Master. I know my injuries well. It's best for me to cultivate and recover on my own. It will help me master the 5-colored fire lotus faster. Lin Feng nodded. Not bad, very good. Xiao Yin, you are very good. You have the appearance of an eldest brother. Very good. He turned to look at Zhu Yi, Wang Lin, Shi Tianhao, and the other disciples. Everyone is very good. I am very happy. Everyone smiled and bowed to Lin Feng again. Master is not here. If there is anything, we should do it. Thank you for your concern. Lin Feng turned to Xiao Zhener and Gu Peng. Thank you for your hard work. Xiao Zhener bowed and said, Senior Lin, you are too kind. My family's medium-class world has also changed. Father and the others can't leave, so only Uncle Peng and I came. Otherwise, if Father could come, the battle at Yujing Mountain wouldn't have been so dangerous. If you didn't come out in time, your heaven-punishing sword might have been stolen by Shushan cultivators. Lin Feng waved his hand and smiled. You are too serious. Send my regards to your father. After everyone bowed to Lin Feng quickly received the news that Purple Cloud Dao's Taoist Master Thundercloud and Taoist Master Blue Thunder, Northern Militant Imperial Court's Longevity, Heavenly Spear and High Priest, Thunderbolt Sword Venerable, and Desolate Sword Venerable had all requested to go up the mountain to congratulate him. Lin Feng was naturally fine with it. Almost at the same time, news came. The Zhou dynasty, Songhai Sword Sect, Blaze Sword Sect, as well as the Reincarnation Sect that only has a few big cats left have also come to request a visit. They are undoubtedly here to ransom someone. Chapter 887. After Lin Feng left Shu Mountain, Qin Emperor Shiyu, Zhou Emperor Liang Pan, and Marquis Xuanji Zhu Hongwu were silent at the border of Great Zhou Empire and Great Qin Empire. The cultivators of the two empires were silent for a long time, but both sides started to retreat at the same time. Immortal Dragon City, Grand Imperial Palace, and Great Heaven Wheel all disappeared into the void. The confrontation between the two sides officially ended. Zhu Hongwu landed in Grand Imperial Palace. Liang Pan sat on the dragon throne. Silently, he looked at Zhu Hongwu and said, Hongwu, time waits for no man. You need to strive to fuse with the Tao as soon as possible. Yes, Your Majesty. Zhu Hongwu nodded his head, his expression as usual. I also feel that I can't grasp the current situation. The strength that the master of the celestial sect of wonders has displayed this time is indeed beyond imagination. My great Zhou dynasty should prepare early. That unfilial son of mine actually managed to refine a creation magical treasure. Even if I wanted to teach him a lesson, I wouldn't have complete confidence that I could defeat him. But if I wanted to kill him or capture him, I wouldn't have the confidence that I could. Unless I was willing to use the great celestial wheel to destroy his Permetha bridge, then trap him and prevent him from escaping, only then would I have a chance of capturing him. Liang Pan said, not bad. Next, go all out to fuse with the Tao. I'll prepare the heavenly grotto heaven and the resources you need for time acceleration. You can use them freely. Zhu Hongwu bowed, thank your majesty for your kindness. Liang Pan stood up from the dragon throne. Light and shadow flashed in front of him, and two images appeared. One of them was the Azure Sea Sword Sect's Honorable Swordsman Emerald Wave, Honorable Swordsman Tidewatching, and the others. The other was the only remaining Essence Soul Cultivator in Eastern Heaven Gate, Shao Qingqing. After Shao Dongtian went to Kunlun Mountain, Shao Qingqing stayed in the capital of Great Zhou Dynasty and did not return to the Vermilion Heaven Pagoda. Liang Pan said slowly, Minister Shao's family and swordsmen of the vast sea are both imprisoned because of the Great Zhou Dynasty. Naturally, I will not mistreat them. Later, someone will go to Yujing Mountain to negotiate and redeem them. You can come with them. When you return, just take whatever you need from the treasury. Azure Sea Sword Venerable and the others bowed. Thank you, Your Majesty. Shao Qingqing sighed. Your Majesty, I think it's better if I don't go. Otherwise, it might be even more disadvantageous to the negotiations between Great Zhou and Xianmen Tianzong. Lin Feng and Zhu Yi wouldn't deliberately humiliate or make things difficult for her, but if she went, not only would it not show her sincerity, it might even backfire. Liang Mingliang nodded and didn't say anything else. After the light disappeared, he looked into the distance and sighed, time waits for no man. In the end, the person in charge of heading to Jade Capital Mountain was a void return cultivator from the Great Zhou Dynasty. He was a member of the royal family, the Prince of Yan Liang Fu. Among the primordial soul experts of the Great Zhou Dynasty, he was the most mild-tempered one. After all, he was going to Yujing Mountain this time to make amends. When he received the news that everyone had come to visit, Lin Feng smiled faintly. Those who came to congratulate him and those who came to redeem him, he would let them up the mountain together. When everyone saw each other, they couldn't help but feel slightly awkward. Tao Master Thundercloud and Tao Master Blue Thunder looked at the white-robed young man in front of them. Xin Qifeng, you're actually here? The white-robed young man was the personal disciple of the reincarnation sect Master Shi Tianfang, Tao Master Tian Tan, Xin Qifeng. He smiled slightly. I was imprisoned in the heavenly abyss of the Bai sect before. Sect Master Lin raised the mountain gate of the heavenly realm, so I was able to come out. I've always disagreed with the ideas of my master and the others. However, I'm insignificant and I've been sentenced to heavenly abyss, so there's nothing I can do. But after all, I'm an elder of the sect, so I can only shamelessly come here. I hope Sect Master Lin can forgive me. He cupped his hands toward Tao Master Thundercloud and Tao Master Blue Thunder. I'm Wu Su of the Animal Path and Dark Lord of the Hell Path. I've offended you before. Please forgive me. Tao Master Thundercloud looked at him and said in a deep voice, Who do you represent now? The reincarnation sect, or just the heavenly realm? Xin Qifeng replied, Sect Master Mo of the Azura Path is the new sect master of the Bai sect. He's injured and needs to recuperate, so he asked me to come here. The so-called sect master Mo was naturally the sect master of the Azura Path of the reincarnation sect, Mo Shilu. He had been imprisoned by Shi Tianfang before and was released when Lin Feng wiped out the mountain gate of the heavenly realm. As the only remaining Tao integration expert of the reincarnation sect, he naturally became the new sect master when the reincarnation sect was declining. Shi Tianfang was dead, so Emo Shilua didn't mind uniting others. Moreover, he was more urgent than the great Zhou dynasty. Tao Master Thundercloud didn't say anything more and fell silent. Tao Master Blue Thunder and Shin Qifeng chatted casually. Sword Master of the Thunderbolt, Sword Master of the Great Wilderness, High Priest Bei Rong, Longevity Heavenly Spear, and King Yen Liang, Liang Fu of the Great Zhou dynasty stood together. A short while later, people from the Great Qin dynasty also came to congratulate them. The Tao integration stage South Bright Monarch Shi Zongtang and the Return to Void stage Tranquility Monarch Shi Zongyue came together. Accompanying them were the Sun-Moon Sword Sects Glorious Sun Sword Venerate and the Star Constellation Sword Venerate. After everyone greeted each other, Thunderbolt Sword Master and Great Wilderness Sword Master looked at Sunshine Sword Master and Constellation Sword Master and sighed, "You guys are here too." Sun Luminary Sword Venerable replied, "The Master of the Celestial Gate destroyed the celestial realm with his sword, allowing our divine land's sword Tao to finally return to the right track. How can such a favor be expressed with a mere visit to the mountain?" The Star Constellation Sword Venerable sighed and said, "Ever since the founding master, the sages of the past have never understood the reason. Why is it that when our sect's sword arts reach a certain level, it will fall into a shackle that we can't break free from, and the path ahead is completely blocked? Although I had some suspicions before and vaguely felt that it was related to Shu Mountain and the Immortal Heaven Sword, I didn't know why. It wasn't until the Master of the Celestial Gate used his sword to destroy the Immortal Heaven Sword, shattering the invisible shackles and stirring the grand Tao of the world, that I understood the whole story. It's a pity that our ancestors still don't understand and can only sigh at the blocked path ahead." Thunderbolt Sword Venerable snorted. "Which sect's founding master isn't like this? The Shu Mountain Sword sect has been harboring evil intentions from the beginning. How could they tell the truth? On one hand, they deceived those who came to seek guidance, on the other hand, they eliminated those who fumbled on their own. In the end, they created the number one sword of heaven's origin." Flowing Light Sword Venerable's figure appeared before them. Silently, he said, "Shu Mountain harbored evil intentions and used us. However, when our founding masters established the sect, they did study the Shu Mountain Sword Tao in detail. That's why the initial stage was relatively smooth. It's just that the price paid after that was too great. It's hard to say whether it's a blessing or a curse." Thunderbolt Sword Venerable said coldly, "What's hard to say? If we knew the truth, who would be stupid enough to learn his sword arts?" When the various sects were first established, they all had a good impression of Shu Mountain. They thought that it was broad-minded, willing to share, and like a teacher to the world. If it wasn't for the fact that they gradually felt that Shu Mountain's style was too overbearing and unreasonable, they wouldn't have been so distant from it. It was precisely because of this that they were especially angry after the truth was revealed. Silently, Honorable Swordsman of the Great Wilderness said, "If we didn't learn his sword arts and wanted to fumble on our own, the swords of our ancestors would have long been in the great immortal heaven's manifestation sword formation, right? Sometimes ignorance is bliss. We've persevered through the darkest times, and now we're finally welcoming the light." Thunderbolt Sword Venerable said with a sorrowful smile, "If the Xian sect master's heaven-crushing sword hadn't appeared, how long would the dark times have lasted? We don't even know why there's always darkness before our eyes. We've welcomed the light, but what about our ancestors? Our sect's fourth sect master, my great-grandmaster, was a genius. He cultivated our sect's Thunderbolt Sword Tao and was better than Shushan Sword Venerable of the same generation and cultivation level in sword fights. He was able to fight a great demon of the unity of the stars and souls at the Void Return Realm and escape unscathed. And the result? He reached the Void Return Realm in 600 years and was stuck at the peak of the Void Return Realm for over 10,000 years. He suffered in the accelerated time grotto heaven, went in and out of the void battlefield 5 times, went deep into the Ing Ocean to challenge layers of illusions, went deep into the infinite region to kill demons, and took the initiative to enter the void to attract endless thunderbolts to strike himself in order to gain enlightenment. He experienced all kinds of dangers and tribulations for so long, but in the end it was all in vain. In the end, he died in the hands of a great demon of the initial tribulation stage in the War of the Two Worlds. Thunderbolt Sword Venerable shook his head with a bitter smile. Back then, Great Grandmaster was high-spirited and wanted to be the first person of our sect to achieve Tao integration. It's a pity that he didn't understand until his death that all his efforts were in vain. He raised his eyes to look at Flowing Light Swordsman. If I remember correctly, the founder of your Celeritas sword sect was also a great grandmaster of the Way of the Sword that surpassed the Shushan junior swordsman of the same generation. Do you think that if he knew the truth, would he still go and accept the Shushan sword sect's small kindness that concealed evil intentions? Sword Venerable Flowing Light's expression was calm. He sighed softly and didn't say anything. Sword Venerable Sunlight said silently, "Perhaps the original intention of the master of the celestial sect was to settle the grudge between Xianmen Tianzong and the Shushan sword sect. However, to us sword cultivators, his contributions will last for generations to come." Sword Venerable Flowing Light, Thunderbolt Sword Venerable, Desolation Sword Venerable, and Star Constellation Sword Venerable all nodded and said in unison, "That's right. Regardless of whether he cares or not, we have all received his kindness." The few great sword cultivators on Jade Capital Mountain avoided the great Qin dynasty's southern wisdom monarch Shi Zongtong and the others. However, Shi Zongtong and the others also shook their heads and sighed when they saw them gathered together. The Battle of Shushan and the changes in the weather after the destruction of the immortal heaven, coupled with the explanations of Sword Venerable Sunlight, Sword Venerable Constellation, and Sword Venerable Flying Snow, the great Qin dynasty naturally understood the whole story. The relationship between the great Qin dynasty and Shushan had never been on good terms. The tranquil monarch Shi Zongyue snorted, coaxing and tricking others into borrowing money from usury. Those who were unwilling were chased out. Those who borrowed money from him, after developing to a certain point, all of their profits were used to support him. They couldn't even back out if they wanted to, unless the entire sect's orthodoxy was destroyed. No wonder the immortal heaven sword was able to recover so quickly after Shushan experienced several great calamities. If not for these great calamities, who knows what the immortal heaven sword would be like now? The southern wisdom monarch Shi Zongtong said, looking at how Xian Longsheng and the others reacted when the immortal heaven was destroyed. They probably didn't know about it either. It was probably the plan of the ancient and medieval era's helmsman of Shushan. Ren Chongmei was only around 3 or 4 generations under him. Shi Zongyue sneered, "That's right. Shushan has already become a holy land of swordsmanship. All they have to do is follow the rules. So what if they didn't know about it?" Shi Zongtong didn't look at Venerable Swordsman of the Thunderclap and the others. Instead, he looked at Venerable Swordsman of Emerald Wave and the other cultivators of the Songhai sword sect who had come with the great Zhou dynasty. He saw that although Venerable Swordsman of Emerald Wave and the others had calm expressions, they looked at Yujing Mountain with complicated expressions. Under the guidance of Lin Feng's sect master disciple, Xiao Yan, everyone entered the All-Heaven Great Hall to wait. Facing Xiao Yan now, none of the primordial spirit experts, including the Tao integration realm Shi Zongtong, dared to underestimate him. The Xiao Yan before them was no longer just a disciple of Lin Feng's sect master. He was an expert who could stand on equal footing with them. My master will be here in a moment. Please wait for him. Please don't take offense if there is any delay, Xiao Yan said politely. Shi Zongtong and the others shook their heads in understanding and said, "It's fine." The great battle had just ended, so it was normal for Lin Feng to deal with the matters of his sect first. It was not disrespectful. At this moment, Lin Feng was standing on the mysterious heaven treasure tree. He opened his palm, and a grain of sand floated in his palm. Yang Qing knelt before him, while Wang Lin, Yu Hongyan, and Kong Nanhua sighed at the side. Chapter 888. Lin Feng had already listened to Wang Lin and the others' narration of what had happened. At this moment, he was using his divine sense to carefully sense the sand in his hand. A wisp of green smoke was condensed in the sand. It was like a small bug in amber, but also like an undetectable thin thread. After scanning it with his divine sense, Lin Feng muttered to himself, "If that little girl did not kill herself, I could use the bell of creation to manifest the gate of life and death. With the help of the yin and yang life and death formation and the 3 pages of the book of life and death, even if it was a remnant soul that was refined into a poisonous ghost, it could still be recovered. At that time, I could find a physical body, or even another treasure for her to temporarily live in. Slowly it would be good. But now there's only a remnant soul left. No, it can't even be called a remnant soul anymore. There's only a wisp of energy left. It's going to be extremely difficult to recover. I'm afraid even the Underworld Emperor doesn't have the confidence to do so." Lin Feng thought, even if she resurrects, there is not much memory and consciousness left. It would be difficult to say that they are the same person. But fortunately, Nanhua was willing to damage her Yuanying to use a secret technique. Otherwise, this trace of remnant soul would not be left. Lin Feng carefully pondered for a moment, and a vague thought appeared in his mind. The success rate is limited. The result is really unpredictable. He flicked his finger, and a half-black, half-white ball of light that looked like a fruit appeared in midair. It was the Netherworld Dao fruit that he had obtained from the Hall Master of the Nether Hall, Su Anda. The Dao fruit did not contain any evil souls. Lin Feng sent the sand into the ball of light, and then the ball of light floated in front of Yang Qing. Lin Feng slowly said, "100 years later, there will be a fortuitous encounter that may allow you to reunite, but your master is only around 50% certain." Although it was a little cruel, Lin Feng still explained everything to Yang Qing. Yang Qing looked at the light in a daze, and then bowed to Lin Feng again. "Thank you, master. Disciple's wish is satisfied to have a glimmer of hope. No matter how bad the situation is, it will not be worse than now." Disciple, on the other hand, has troubled master again. Lin Feng raised his palm in the air, already helping Yang Qing up. "You've confirmed your heart and the path you're going to take in life. I'm happy for you. Walk down this path consistently, always reflect on yourself. I believe that your future is bright." Yang Qing said, "Master, I understand. But before that, follow me to Tianhuang vast land and find Yun Tsong first," Lin Feng said. Yang Qing nodded. "Yes, master." Looking at Yang Qing, who has a calm and confident temperament, no longer having the inferiority complex and weak air of the past, Lin Feng's mind was also slightly dazed. "You've all grown up, huh?" Yang Qing, the price was too high for her. Thinking of this, Lin Feng glanced at Kong Nanhua. Kong Nanhua's expression was calm, not saying anything. Faced with such a huge blow, with Yang Qing's original temperament, she would either make a huge breakthrough and obtain a new life like she was now, or she wouldn't be able to withstand such a huge blow and have her spirit completely collapse, her will completely dispirited. There is a critical point, and the result will be different. Lin Feng suspected that the critical point was the last remnant soul in the sand. If Kong Nanhua was not there to protect Fong Ting's last remnant soul, the result will be different. If Kong Nan Hua had not been there to protect the last remnant of Fong Ting's soul, the outcome would have been completely different. But, relaxing his mind, Lin Feng used an action that bystanders could not detect, his gaze moving back and forth between Wang Lin and Yang Qing. This rhythm, it's so weird. Lin Feng muttered in his heart. Can the cursed lone star be contagious or transferred? Dispelling distracting thoughts from his mind, Lin Feng's gaze swept across his disciples. Even though its potential value and not the current value, but as expected, if you encounter a special situation that can only be encountered by luck and not sought after, the potential value will also change. Xiao Yan and the others have changed. Besides Xiao Qing, Hong Yan has changed. Only Yuan Fong and Xiao Wu haven't changed. Is it because the opportunity hasn't come? Lin Feng thought. Yu Hongyan walked forward, holding a green-black halberd in both hands for Lin Feng to deal with. It was the Army Breaker King halberd she got from Zhang Lai. This is your own opportunity, just keep it. Lin Feng smiled slightly. He looked at Yu Hongyan and said, walk your own path, straighten your heart, and you will be enlightened. At this moment, Yu Hongyan had changed a lot compared to the past. Her gaze was much calmer. Previously, the red-haired girl was like a sharp blade that could be drawn at any moment. At the same time, she was also vulnerable to the corrosion of time. However, at this moment, it was as if she had been sheathed. But that didn't mean she was no longer sharp. When it was necessary, she would be even sharper and more intimidating. Yu Hongyan nodded. Holding the spear, she bowed to Lin Feng. I will remember Master's teachings. Lin Feng turned to look at Wang Lin. He smiled. Little Lin, keep this well. Study it carefully. He took out the 3 pages of the Book of Life and Death. He kept half a page for himself and gave the other 3 pages to Wang Lin. Wang Lin took the page and studied it carefully. His eyes brightened. He looked at Lin Feng. Thank you, Master. Lin Feng said, your underworld pearl has nurtured its original spirit again. It has become a magic treasure again. Although it can't be compared to when it was at the peak of the Mahayana level, it is still a real magic treasure. But because of this, you have to be careful. It's fine if you are on Yujing Mountain or by my side. But if you are traveling alone, you have to be careful of the King of the Underworld and the Book of Life and Death. A cold light flashed in Wang Lin's eyes. He nodded. I understand, Master. A few years ago, after Lin Feng and Su Anda had fought briefly in the Mystic Heaven realm, Lin Feng had told them that the Underworld Pearl originated from the Underworld Devil Sect, a super sect of the Devil Path. It was once the king of the Underworld's orthodoxy. Now that Lin Feng had captured Su Anda, he had a deeper understanding of this. After the king of the underworld was deposed, he had made arrangements to forcefully reverse life and death. He fell into a state where he was half alive and half dead, yet neither. He had lived for a long time, waiting for the time to truly be resurrected. During this period, the king of the underworld was not completely unaware of what was happening in the outside world. He had made many preparations in secret. Among them, there were 4 who had secretly inherited his teachings. The eldest disciple was the founding ancestor of the reincarnation sect, the reincarnation Taoist. He had combined the teachings of Buddhism and the king of the underworld to establish the reincarnation sect. He was neither good nor evil and had always been active in the divine land. Later on, the reincarnation Taoist died in an accident. None of his successors knew about this, and the reincarnation sect fell apart. In recent years, the king of the underworld and Su Anda had secretly invaded the reincarnation sect. The second disciple was the founding ancestor of the underworld devil sect, the netherworld Taoist. He had perished with the netherworld devil sect in the Great War that ended the Middle Era. The third disciple, the netherworld Taoist, was the most mysterious. His whereabouts were unknown. Even Su Anda only knew that he existed. He had no other information. The last disciple was the master of the underworld hall, Su Anda. However, Su Anda was disloyal and tried to plot against the king of the underworld. He even wanted to take the book of life and death for himself. Unfortunately, the older, the wiser. Su Anda had intended to bury Shi Tianfang in the pit he dug on Yujing Mountain, but Shi Tianfang fell into the pit, and Su Anda himself was kicked into the pit by the underworld emperor, who was even further behind, and was buried together with Shi Tianfang. Wang Lin thought, the Book of Life and Death has refined the 6 paths of reincarnation and finally achieved creation. If it swallowed the underworld pearl of the Mahayana level, it might be able to improve further. Zhu Yi, Shi Tianhao, and the others walked over. Shi Tianhao gritted his teeth and said, "Master, now that you have captured the master of the underworld hall, Su Anda, we can find the lair of the underworld hall now, right? You want to go to the vast land of infinite wilderness to find the old cicada, golden cicada, and Yunsong. We will go to the underworld hall to settle the score." Lin Feng said, "A cunning rabbit has 3 burrows. It is not easy to find the underworld hall for it to survive to this day." This time, Su Anda thought he was smart and plotted against Shi Tianfang, but he did not know that he was also in the king of the underworld's trap. When the king of the underworld escaped that day, he knew that Su Anda and Zhang Enrui were in my hands. It is impossible that he did not make preparations. Shi Tianhao gritted his teeth and said, "I am just afraid that they will still want to harm my parents and grandfather." Lin Feng smiled and said, "Don't worry, he will take the bait himself. There is actually a clue in front of us that we can use." Zhu Yi, Wang Lin, Shi Tianhao, and the others looked at each other with a look of realization in their eyes. "Master, you mean?" Lin Feng smiled and said, "You guys take good care of your vital spirits. After I receive the guests, I will give you some advice. Dao Master Liubo, King Kuei Niu, and King Si Spirit Chariot have not seen each other for a long time. Let them have a chat. Dao Master Liubo also wants to join our celestial sect as an offering, and I have already agreed. Xiaoyi, you will arrange a cave residence for him later." After Zhu Yi agreed, Lin Feng looked at Yang Qing and said with a smile, "Little Qing, you will need a lot of magic treasures." Yang Qing smiled and said, "Master, you must be joking." Lin Feng moved and arrived at the celestial hall. He looked at Shi Zongtong, Dao Master Thundercloud, Sword Venerable of Thunderbolt, Longevity Heavenly Spear, and the others and said, "Sorry to keep you waiting." Shi Zongtong and the others said they did not dare. Sword Venerable of Thunderbolt, Sword Venerable of Glorious Sun, and other sword cultivators bowed respectfully to him and said, "Thank you, Master of Celestial Sect, for inviting the immortal heaven to perish with a sword from beyond the heavens." Lin Feng looked calm and shook his head. He did not take the credit and said, "I have told Dao Master Liuguang that sending the immortal heaven to perish is to settle the grudge between our sect and Mount Shu. You don't need to thank me." Sword Venerable of Thunderbolt and the others shook their heads in unison and bowed to Lin Feng. They did not say anything else, but from their expressions, it was clear that they would remember this favor. Lin Feng sat on the main seat and looked at the people in front of him. His gaze swept across Sword Venerable of Emerald Wave, King Yen Yang of the Great Zhou, Liang Fu, Shin Qifeng, and the others. He said lightly, "I am not a bloodthirsty person, so I will not make things difficult for those who have not ascended Yujing Mountain. However, a small punishment is always a warning. You can forget about leaving." Sword Venerable of Emerald Wave and the others nodded. Liang Fu said, "We were impolite in this matter, so we naturally have to express our gratitude. In addition, Sect Master Lin's disciple has reached the primordial spirit realm. The Great Zhou also has a congratulatory gift." Lin Feng nodded slightly and continued, "However, anyone who sets foot on Yujing Mountain with ill intentions will have to pay the price. Just stay on the Xiantian God sealing banner of Xianmen Tianzong." Hearing this, Liang Fu sighed inwardly. He knew that since Lin Feng had said this, he would not go back on his word. Xiao Dongtian and Dao Master Dongming would probably not be able to redeem them. Chapter 889. Liang Fu sighed and made one last effort. East Heaven Gates Master Xiao and Master Dongming, please let them go. The great Zhou dynasty is willing to exchange with a complete medium-class world. Lin Feng calmly glanced at him, lightly saying, "The specific details can be discussed between the king of Yanliang and my head disciple Xiao Yan. But there is no room for compromise on some things." Liang Fu was silent for a moment and finally didn't speak. Songhai Sword Sect's esteemed swordsman Emerald Wave looked at Liang Fu and also didn't speak. After all, Liang Fu was the leader of this trip. Although esteemed swordsman Emerald Sea was captured by Lin Feng, the entire Songhai Sword Sect was grateful for Lin Feng's kindness of cutting the celestial sword. Therefore, their feelings were very complicated and they couldn't express their stance. Esteemed swordsman Emerald Wave and the others were prepared to wait for esteemed swordsman Emerald Sea to come back and discuss together. After that, it was mainly Xiao Yan and Li Yuanfang who would slowly discuss with the other party. Xiao Yan was responsible for demanding an exorbitant price, while Li Yuanfang was responsible for discussing them one by one. Esteemed swordsman Fire was captured, and the one who came to ransom him was his personal disciple, Yuanying Late Stage. He was very straightforward and his attitude was very clear. As long as he had it, he would give it whatever he wanted. On one hand, it was because esteemed swordsman Fire was the pillar of the Blaze Sword Sect, and on the other hand, it was also because he was grateful for Lin Feng's kindness of cutting the celestial sword. Shen Qifeng of the Reincarnation Sect was also straightforward and directly expressed that he was willing to pay the Red Lotus Hellfire large amounts of resources and rare treasures, as well as the Reincarnation Sect's power base in 2 medium-class worlds in exchange for the Dark Lord and Wu Shusen. He knew that Xianmen Tianzong's Xiao Yan controlled at least 5 types of true fire, so he directly put the Red Lotus Hellfire on the table. The Empyrean Primordial Spirit Elders had already been trampled to death by Lin Feng, so he simply didn't mention it. Shen Qifeng was very clever. He didn't mention a word about Zhang and Rui and the Sky Ghost Taoist, but he hoped to redeem the Shura Katana. However, this proposal was rejected by Xianmen Tianzong. After realizing that there was no hope of getting Xiao Dongtian and Dongming back, the great Zhou Empire could only settle for the next best thing. They hoped to get Sword Venerable Vast Sea and the Eastern Heaven Gate Nascent Divinity Cultivator, who was captured with the Vermilion Heaven Pagoda. At the same time, they hoped to get the Black Heaven Seal, the Vermilion Heaven Pagoda, and other treasures. However, the mysterious Heaven Seal had been seized by Xianmen Tianzong, and there was no possibility of it being returned. It was the same for the Flaming Heaven Divine Cauldron. The sky-piercing jade light needle that had been suppressed along with Dao Sovereign Dongming had also been detained and could not be redeemed. This treasure was the most insidious treasure among the 9 treasures of the heavenly gates. It had killed countless souls. In the past, the Mahayana stage sky-piercing jade light needle had killed a Dao integration stage cultivator on its own. Although it had become a new spirit-nurturing stage treasure, the true meaning of its power was of the same origin as the sky-piercing jade light needle of the past. A sliver of green light specialized in breaking through one's defense and piercing one's soul. It was pervasive yet untraceable. Once it had identified its target, it would follow it relentlessly. This treasure had fallen into the hands of a void-returned stage cultivator who was bent on sneak attack. If used appropriately, it would be a great threat. During the Battle of Jade Capital Mountain, the twin poles of the Heavenly Peak had faced off against Dao Sovereign Dongming and this treasure. Although the twin poles of the Heavenly Peak had been heavily injured, its foundation was still intact. It could still manage to deal with Dao Sovereign Dongming and the sky-piercing jade light needle. Later, sword venerable flowing light replaced the two poles sky peaks and unleashed the speed advantage of his sword Dao to the extreme. To a certain extent, he did not fear or even restrain the sky-piercing jade light needle, which was why he did not cause any trouble. Now, Xianmen Tianzong and Dao Sovereign Flowing Wave, who were at the void return stage, had to be careful when they encountered an enemy of the same cultivation level using this treasure. If they were not careful, they might be injured by the jade light that specialized in breaking through defense. The Flaming Heaven Divine Cauldron, which was also a new treasure, was not allowed to be redeemed. This item looked inconspicuous and was only at the spirit nurturing stage, but it actually had great potential value. On the other hand, the Vermilion Heaven Pagoda, an ancient treasure of the transformation stage, was allowed to be redeemed. This treasure actually had extraordinary functions. Unfortunately, Yin Songchen had revealed his original location after being captured. Although he had moved, Lin Feng's dermic powers and the special effects of the Greenly Jade had led him to a new location. However, Xianmen Tianzong already had the Jade Jing Mountain, which was even more powerful. There was not much use for this item. This time, the other party would definitely be very careful in redeeming it. He would remove all traces, choose a place carefully, and escape into the void again. However, Lin Feng did not care. After having experienced it once, he was confident that he could force the other party out again. At most, if the other party was fully prepared, he would have to spend more effort. However, the Great Zhou Empire and the Eastern Heavenly Gate still had the intention to redeem this treasure. After all, they might face threats that might exist, and Lin Feng was not the only one. Moreover, most of these threats did not have a deep enough friendship to ask Lin Feng to help find the Vermilion Heaven Pagoda. In the end, Xiao Yan asked for an exorbitant price. The sword venerable of the vast sea, the Eastern Heavenly Gate's primordial spirit embodiment realm cultivator, and the Vermilion Heaven Pagoda were exchanged for the complete medium-class world that the Great Zhou Empire originally planned to use to redeem Shao Dongtian and the Xiantian Seal. The Great Zhou Empire's East Victory Realm was different from the Reincarnation Sect's two medium-class worlds. The Reincarnation Sect shared those two medium-class worlds with other forces. One of them was the ancient Yuantian realm that Luo Qingwu was born in. The Great Zhou Empire's East Victory Realm was the same as Xianmen Tianzong's Xiantian realm. It was a unique medium-class world with rich resources. Xiao Yan's mouth opened so wide that even the usually good-tempered king of Yanliang, Liang Fu, had the thought of flinging his sleeves and leaving for a moment. It was not easy for him to restrain himself and argue with Xiao Yan and Li Yuanfang. However, as the victorious party, Xiao Yan and the others refused to budge. Liang Fu's bottom line could only be pushed back again and again. In order to not disappoint the other cultivators under the Great Zhou Empire, he and the Great Zhou imperial family had to redeem Sword Venerable of the Vast Sea and the others. More importantly, he had to buy time for the Great Zhou Empire and fight for a relatively loose space for development. It could be imagined that after the Yingxi dispute, the Great Zhou Empire, whose momentum had been interrupted, would be in an even more disadvantageous situation. If they could not fight for time and space to regroup, the situation might even take a sharp turn for the worse. After the Battle of Shu Mountain, the consensus within the Great Zhou Empire was that they should thank Golden Cicada. Because Golden Cicada had kidnapped the direct disciple of Lin Feng, the master of the Mystic Gate, Lin Feng would definitely go to Infinite Wilderness to settle the score and ask for Golden Cicada after solving the problem of the Divine Land. Without this, Xianmen Tianzong would most likely turn his attention to the Great Zhou Empire. Although they might not fight again like in the Battle of Shu Mountain, they were destined to join forces with the Great Qin Empire to further squeeze the Great Zhou Empire's space. With this opportunity, the Great Zhou Empire would have room to ease the relationship between the two sides, or at least to prevent the situation from deteriorating further. Therefore, in the end, Liang Fu could only pinch his nose and accept it. He used the entire East Victory Realm, and all the resources in it to exchange for Sword Venerable Vast Sea and the other two. He also added some treasures to exchange for the other East Heaven Gate disciples who had been captured with the Vermilion Heaven Pagoda. After settling the issue of compensation, Liang Fu and the others also didn't have the face to stay any longer, leaving one by one. On the other hand, before Venerable Swordsman Vast Sea and Venerable Raging Fire left, they instead solemnly bowed towards Lin Feng together. After dealing with the compensation issue, Lin Feng personally thanked Shi Zongtang and the others for their help. Other than verbal gratitude, Lin Feng was not stingy at all. The East Victory Realm was directly transferred to the Great Qin Dynasty, and the territories that the Reincarnation sect occupied in the two medium-sized worlds were transferred to Purple Cloud Dao. As for the Northern Militant Imperial Court, they obtained the magic treasure that originally belonged to the East Heaven Gate, the Yentian Divine Cauldron. For the Northern Militant Imperial Court, who now occupied the entire northern border and did not lack resources, this treasure complemented each other. It was convenient for the Northern Militant Imperial Court to quickly convert resources and increase their strength. The Longevity Heavenly Spear and the Northern Militant High Priest were both pleasantly surprised by this harvest. It was practically scratching the itch in their hearts. If they had to choose from several items of equal value, they would also choose the Yentian Divine Cauldron. As for how to make this magic treasure obedient, that would depend on their own abilities. This was something that should be done. As for the Celeritas Sword Sect, the Thunderbolt Sword Sect, and the Wilderness Sword Sect, Lin Feng naturally expressed his intentions. However, these three clans all insisted on declining, saying that they were ashamed to accept it. After a few refusals, Lin Feng did not push it too far. He said, "This time, the immortal heaven has been destroyed and the truth has been revealed. I know that the few of you have a lot of opinions about Shushan. I believe that Shushan is also aware of this. The few of you can decide for yourselves when you will take the initiative to seek out Shushan. I, Xianmen Tianzong, will definitely not interfere or stop you. If Shushan takes the initiative to find trouble with you, you must let me know." Celeritas Swordsman, Thunderbolt Swordsman, and the others nodded silently and bowed to Lin Feng. "We will remember the righteousness of the master of the Xian sect. However, we owe your sect and you more and more. We cannot repay this favor, but we will obey your orders. You are too kind." Lin Feng waved his hand and said. After thanking them, Lin Feng talked to Shi Zongtang, Dao Master Thundercloud, High Priest Bei Rong, Celeritas Swordsman, Celeritas Swordsman, Celeritas Swordsman, and the others. It was mainly about the future development of the Divine Land, especially the changes that might happen during Lin Feng's trip to Infinite Wasteland. After sending off Shi Zongtang and the others, Lin Feng sat in the All Heavens Hall. Other than Xiao Yan and Li Yuanfang, Zhu Yi Wang Lin, and the rest of Xianmen Tianzong's group appeared in front of Lin Feng. "This matter is over. I will prepare to go to Infinite Wasteland now." Lin Feng first looked at Xiao Yan, Zhu Yi, and Yu Hongyan. "Xiao Yan, Xiao Yi, Hongyan, I will leave the mountain this time. You three stay here and contact me if anything happens. I will be back soon. I will leave Yujing Mountain and the Yinyang Life and Death Array. This time, Yujing Mountain will definitely not show up. The will of the Mystic Sky treasure tree has returned, and it usually hides in the void. The Yinyang Life and Death Array now has 49 Yinyang dust particles to guard the array core. It can also operate on its own. You don't need to worry about it. In this way, with the three of you and Xiao Yi's Permetha Bridge, there will be no worries in the short term." Xiao Yan was slightly stunned. "Master, your sky-crushing sword, the Bell of Creation, and the sky-crushing sword array have all been sacrificed together. Now you don't even bring the Yinyang Life and Death Array." Lin Feng smiled. "Silly boy, don't worry. I haven't revealed everything in Shu Mountain yet. Chapter 890. Hearing Lin Feng's words, Xiao Yan and the others' eyes lit up. Master, Lin Feng smiled and waved his hand. He looked at Xiao Yan and said, Xiao Yan, stay on Yujing Mountain and focus on recuperating and refining the Xidagarba true flame. You've sacrificed a lot this time. If you can get little Lin and the others to bring back the true light of Xidagarba, your primordial spirit will be able to control the 5-color fiery lotus even though you can't activate it. The gazes that the others looked at Xiao Yan were both grateful and unable to bear it. Xiao Yan instead smiled. It's fine, Master, I can still make it in time now. Lin Feng nodded and smiled. Try to figure it out yourself. You might gain something else. It might be a new opportunity. But remember, don't try the 6-colored fiery lotus before you reach void return. Otherwise, the power of destruction will destroy your primordial spirit. If you want to refine the karmic fire of the red lotus, you need to be careful. 7 types of true flames are too much for you now. Yes, Master. I understand. Xiao Yan agreed. Lin Feng continued. Thank you, little junior brother. You can refine the divine stone of 2-phase battle according to the method I taught you. Even now, you can refine a powerful body. Shi Tianhao smiled and said, What do you think, eldest senior brother? I told you that you would like it. Xiao Yan snickered. Even a fool will get it right once in a while. You're finally reliable for once. Everyone else laughed. Shi Tianhao was not annoyed. He smiled and shook his fist at Xiao Yan. You should stay on the mountain and cultivate well. After talking to Xiao Yan, Lin Feng looked at Zhu Yi. Xiao Yi, it's time for you to read thousands of books and travel thousands of miles. Do whatever you want to do. It will also improve your Permitha Golden Bridge. Zhu Yi nodded heavily. I understand. He also knew that Lin Feng had not left the mountain to train in seclusion this time, and Yujing Mountain would not easily show itself again. However, if there were any foreign enemies coming to invade, he had to control the Golden Nirvana Bridge to return in time to play a role and hold on until Lin Feng returned. This was also one of the reasons why Lin Feng kept him in the Divine Land. When Lin Feng said that he could do whatever he wanted to do, he naturally meant that he could look for Zhu Hongwu. Lin Feng smiled at Yu Hongyan and said, You have also gained a lot from this trip to the southern wasteland. From now on, you should focus on refining the army vanquisher halberd, and at the same time, prepare for breaking through to the middle stage of Yuanying. Yu Hongyan also smiled, and his sword-like red eyebrows became much softer. I understand. Then, Lin Feng pointed at Wang Lin, Shi Tianhao, Yang Qing, Li Yuanfang, and Luo Qingwu. The few of you, follow me to Infinite Wasteland. The 5 of them bowed together and said, I understand. After giving instructions to his disciples, Lin Feng gave Xiaozhen and Gu Peng the life and death Nether Dao fruit, which was used to refine the evil soul of King Tang of the ancient royal family. King Tang and the others were dead after all, and it was almost impossible for them to really come back to life. How to deal with it, whether to keep the Dao fruit or send them to the afterlife, depended on Xiao Zhen-er's family. The other 2 life and death Nether Dao fruits obtained from the king of the underworld were used to refine the ancient heavenly gates Elder Heavenly Spirit and Wu Zi, one of the ancient Confucian sect's second sage. They could not directly obtain the ancient heavenly gates and ancient Confucian sect's legacies from the 2, and could only observe and speculate from the side. However, Lin Feng and the others did not plan to do so. They directly shattered the life and death Nether Dao fruit and sent the 2 to the afterlife. Before Lin Feng left the mountain, the people of Mount Shu Sword Sect finally came. The one who came was Sword Venerable Xiaoyang, hoping to exchange for Sword Venerable Xiaoshang and Sword Venerable Li Xiong, as well as the 5 swords of Xiaoshang, Sword Venerable Li Xiong, Sword Venerable Xiaoyang, Sword Venerable Xiaozi, and Sword Venerable Guanchong that Xianmen Tianzong had captured. Naturally, Xianmen Tianzong would not return the few immortal swords. Sword Venerable Shaoshang, who had participated in the siege of Shaoyan, Feng Biji, and Zen Master Dade, would not be redeemed either. As for Sword Venerable Taing, Sword Venerable Shaoza, and Sword Venerable Guanchong, Lin Feng did not bother with them. The only one who could be redeemed was Sword Venerable Li Xiong. Sword Venerable Shaoyang, or rather, the entire Mount Shu sword sect's attitude was a little strange. They did not fight for too much, and in an obvious way, they only redeemed Sword Venerable Li Xiong at the price of redeeming two people. Even Sword Venerable Li Xiong, who had always been vicious and ruthless, was a little dazed after leaving the dark sky god's sealing banner. He left with Sword Venerable Shaoyang with a complicated expression. However, some news that came from Mount Shu was quite worth pondering. After Xian Longxing, Sword Venerable Heavenly Dipper, and Sword Venerable Firmament rebuilt the peaks and rebuilt the Mount Shu mountain gate, Xian Longxing resigned from his position as the sect leader of the Mount Shu sword sect. He meditated at the peak of Mount Shu for a day and a night. After watching the sunrise, he traveled far away without a trace. Sword Venerable Heavenly Dipper and Sword Venerable Firmament remained at Mount Shu, but they went into seclusion together. Sword Venerable Shaoyang took over the position of sect leader, becoming the first sect leader of the Mount Shu sword sect who was not at the Dao integration stage. Mount Shu's forces shrank like never before. They guarded a corner of western Shu and sealed the mountain. They did not communicate with the outside world for a short period of time. Even the Grand Elder of Taishu Temple, Dao Venerable Yuan, who came to visit, only stayed for a short while before leaving. As for Xianmen Tianzong, the reconstruction of the Mystic Sky Realm, Cloud Mirror City, and Cloud Peak Mirror Lake was naturally handled by Shaoyan, Zhu Yi, and the others. After making arrangements for other matters, Lin Feng left the mountain with Wang Lin, Shi Tianhao, Yang Qing, Li Yuanfang, and Luo Qingwu. Tunten also went with them. The little guy also wanted to return to Infinite Wilderness. Lin Feng and the others first went to the Void Battlefield to find the king of the Underworld's realm according to the information they received from Su Anda. They found the place, but there was only a desolate and dark world in front of them. Not only was there no one, even the original Black Palace had disappeared. Wang Lin's eyes flickered coldly. Silently, he sensed the aura flowing in this dimensional realm. Shi Tianhao gritted his teeth and said, "He really knows how to dig a hole." Lin Feng said silently, "After this battle, both the King of the Underworld and the Underworld Hall will lie dormant for a period of time. However, he has not given up and will definitely jump out. It's still unknown whether the line we set up previously will catch a big fish. Since we set up the line, the King of the Underworld will also set up the line himself. When the time comes, we will see who is more skilled. Let's go." Lin Feng waved his sleeve and swept everyone away. They left the King of the Underworld realm and headed for Infinite Wilderness. In a certain dimensional realm, in the territory of the Great Qin dynasty, there were not only cultivators but also mortals. There was a big city with many villages around it. In one of the small villages there was an ordinary family. The elderly and the husband and wife of the family were farmers for a living. More than 2 years ago, the wife had been pregnant for 10 months and gave birth to a son. This added another member to the family and continued the family line. The villagers all congratulated them. Be it the elderly or the husband and wife, they were all very happy. Although the child was young, he was obedient and they doted on him even more. The couple and the old man went to work in the field. The old woman coaxed the child to sleep. "Happy is sleepy. Happy is sleeping. Take a nap." The child, whose nickname was Happy, hugged his grandmother and fell asleep peacefully. Seeing that her grandson had fallen asleep, the old woman also took a nap. The old woman was asleep, but Happy's eyes were wide open. He did not get up. His right eye suddenly turned pitch black, projecting a black shadow in the room. Not only could ordinary people not see this shadow, even cultivators below the essence soul realm could not see it. Even if someone entered the room, even if the old woman woke up, she would only see Happy sleeping soundly. This child named Happy was naturally the reincarnation of the king of the underworld. His expression was peaceful. Spending time with his family in this life allowed him to clearly feel the joy of life and the peace of death. Together, they helped him recover his strength. He was the king of the underworld, the ruler of the two worlds of life and death. He was not a god impermanence who only cultivated the will of death. In the shadow, a few figures appeared. All of them were dressed in black robes. The one in the lead was tall and tall. His appearance could not be seen clearly, but he was an expert of the Tao integration realm. The master of the underworld hall, the head of the 10 infernal kings and the one with the highest cultivation, King Yenluo, had always been loyal to the king of the underworld, Happy. Su Anda had secretly plotted a rebellion and was most wary of him. Su Anda had brought the Book of Life and Death to Mount Yujing and had no choice but to leave behind the Mahayana-grade artifact, the king of the underworld's brush, to watch over him. Beside King Yenluo were the king of equality and the king of chakra, who were also loyal to the king of the underworld. Apart from them, there was another person. He was a pale old man with a thin face. He was the disobedient king, Sikong Yu, who had been killed by Wang Lin, Zhang Lai, and King Chu Jiang. Wang Lin's intuition that day was correct. Sikong Yu had indeed faked his death. Like King Yenluo, he was also a loyal follower of the king of the underworld. He had even secretly obtained some clues about Su Anda's rebellion, which was why Su Anda had prioritized his death. However, who knew that everything was within the king of the underworld's calculations, and Sikong Yu had been ordered to beat him at his own game. Beside the four of them were 4 other people, but all of them were kneeling on the ground and kowtowing to the king of the underworld, who was shrouded in black light. The person in the lead was a young man dressed in a black robe with golden edges. He was holding a long writing brush with a black pole and a golden tip in his hands, and he raised it high above his head. This person was naturally the artifact spirit of the king of the underworld's writing brush. He was originally an artifact refined by the king of the underworld and later passed it down to Su Anda. In the end, he rebelled together with Su Anda. The 3 people beside the king of the underworld's writing brush were King Chu Jiang, King Bianqing, and King Dusher. You may be spared from death, but you will not be spared from punishment. Happy, who looked like a 2 to 3 years old child, gently flipped through the Book of Life and Death in front of him. 4 rays of light entered the bodies of the king of the underworld's writing brush, King Chu Jiang, and King Chu Jiang. Painful expressions appeared on their faces. Even though they had managed to preserve their lives, the 4 of them did not feel any joy in their hearts. With the method that the king of the underworld had laid down, he only needed to think about it, and they would immediately die. They would not be able to resist at all. But this was already the best result, so they could only thank him. Other than the original members of the Underworld Palace, there were 2 figures beside them that were not actually present. They were projections formed by magic power. One was an old man with red hair and beard, and the other was a young man in white. Reincarnation Sect's Azura Path Sect Master, the New Generation's Sect Master, Mo Shuluo, and the New Generation's Celestial Path Sect Master, Dao Paragon Tiantan Shin Chifeng. Both of them looked very calm. King Yenluo and Sikong Yu did not look surprised when they looked at them. When the king of the underworld's writing brush, King Chu Jiang, and the others saw this, they smiled bitterly in their hearts. How could they not know that Mo Shuluo and Shin Chifeng had long since pledged their allegiance to the king of the underworld? Su Anda had schemed against Shi Tianfang, but he did not know that from the beginning, he and Shi Tianfang had been in the king of the underworld's plan. The king of the underworld looked at them and said silently, Xianmen Tianzong and Taishu Temple hope to use you to follow the vines and find the melons. It will be hard for the two of you to continue staying in the divine land to deal with them. Mo Shuluo and Shen Qifeng bowed together. It is our honor. Chapter 891. Ever since the end of the primordial era, the main vast thousand world of the great heaven primordial world had been split into two. The human race and the demon race each occupied one side. The human race world was known as the Divine Land, while the demon race world was known as the Infinite Wilderness Vast Land. Although it was called the Infinite Wilderness, it was not really desolate. It was just that the flow of spirit chi there was not suitable for human cultivators and was more suitable for the demon race. For essence soul cultivators, it was not difficult for them to convert spirit chi into heaven and earth. However, for human cultivators who had yet to form the essence soul, their activities there would be slightly restricted. The degree of restriction was not great, but it would take more effort to refine the spirit chi of heaven and earth into their bodies. It was not a big deal usually, but during a life and death battle, it might take one's life. On the other hand, the demon race would be in a similar situation when they went to the Divine Land. The discomfort would only be alleviated if they had lived in the Divine Land for a long time. Lin Feng and the others had arrived at the Infinite Wilderness Vast Land. Lin Feng, Wang Lin and Shi Tianhao were fine. Tunten was as happy as a fish in water. Yang Qing, Li Yuanfang and Luo Qingwu clearly felt that the circulation of their dermic powers was not as smooth as it was in the Divine Land. Although the difference was not great, it was clear. The three of you have never been to the Infinite Wilderness Vast Land before. This is also a form of training, said Lin Feng with a smile. Yang Qing and the other two nodded. Shi Tianhao smiled and said, actually, the difference is not that great. It's fine after you get used to it. Among the people of the celestial sect of wonders, he could be considered the person who had entered and exited the continent the most, and was also the most familiar with this place. In fact, a long time ago, he already had a strong reputation in the vast continent of Tianhuang, causing the expressions of many of the demon clans who were active near the entrance of the divine continent's domain passage to change. It was because this fellow was truly too savage. Not only did he kill, he even ate. Moreover, he didn't care if they were cold or raw, causing the demon race to cry to the heavens. They were almost unable to distinguish between humans and demons. Out of all the disciples under Lin Feng, Wang Lin was the most infamous in the Divine Land. Ever since he entered the void battlefield in the late stages of the Golden Elixir, he had killed Yuanying and blinded one of Shi Tianyi's eyes. In the following years, whenever he fought, there were almost no survivors. To be honest, Shi Tianyi was one of the few who survived after fighting with him. The last time he entered the void battlefield, his hands were stained with blood. Anyone who took the initiative to attack him was killed. His murderous nature was heavy, and many people called him the #1 god of slaughter under the Celestial Gate sect master. However, the most notorious disciple under Lin Feng's tutelage in Tianhuang mainland was undoubtedly Shi Tianhao. The number of demon race that he had killed and even filled his stomach was most likely more than those who had died in the hands of Wang Lin. Shi Tianhao looked at the vast world in front of him, took a deep breath, stretched his back, and his eyes shone brightly. Tunten, the little Taotai, did the same thing. The two of them released their divine senses at the same time and began to search the surroundings, leaving Wang Lin and the others speechless. Lin Feng smiled and knocked their heads. Let's get down to business first. You guys can play later. He swallowed his saliva and said, looking at the surrounding terrain, this is the territory of the great golden-winged Peng race. However, it's still a long way from their ancestral land. It would be great if we can catch a lone great golden-winged Peng. They had left the void battlefield and broken through the domain space to descend into Tianhuang mainland. They didn't come from the constant domain passage of the Divine Land, so they were now in the hinterland of Tianhuang mainland. The current leader of the great golden-winged Peng race was called Thunder Abyss Golden Peng. He was also the great sage Golden Peng who had schemed to refine the dark flower of Yudu in the cloud forest world. Lin Feng thought of something and said, "Follow me." He waved his sleeves and brought everyone along. They broke through the void and crossed the endless space in a few steps. When they regained their footing, a huge swamp appeared in front of them. Shi Tianhao took a look and shook his head. "I've never been to this place before." Tunton observed carefully and tilted his head to recall for a long time. Then, he said hesitantly, "This place seems to be called Scenic Cloud Swamp. When I was very young, before my corporeal body was destroyed, I passed by this place with my father. He warned me not to get close, saying that this was the territory of the nine-headed neonate." Lin Feng understood. According to the legends, there was a nine-headed monster snake, a monster of water and fire. It could spit water and fire, and its cries were like the cries of a baby. Thus, it was called the nine-headed neonate. It was a very active great demon thousands of years ago and had participated in the war between the two worlds. This demon had no kin and was a lone ranger. However, it was a great demon of the Star Soul Unity realm back then. It didn't die after the war and lived in seclusion. It wasn't as active as before. However, ever since the news of the enchantress and great sage Golden Peng obtaining the dark flower of Yudu spread, this demon reappeared in Tianhuang mainland. Although the nine-headed neonate great sage wasn't one of the 10 saints of the demon race, that was because he spent most of his time cultivating in seclusion and didn't show himself easily. In terms of ability, he surpassed most of the 10 saints of the demon race. The so-called 10 saints of the demon race was the name given to the 10 most active great demons in Tianhuang mainland in recent years. It didn't mean that they were the 10 strongest great demons. Just like in the vast land of the divine continent before the changes caused by Lin Feng, if the same standards were used to rank the human race's 10 venerables, not to mention Lord Tai, even Yan Nanlai and Xian Longxing probably wouldn't be included. Relatively speaking, the more active experts are Emperor Qin's Stonefeather, Emperor Zhou's Liangpan, Reincarnation Sect's Shi Tianfang and Mo Shuluo, the Northern Militant Court's first Chan Yu and them, and not a single person from the Void Temple will be included. The 10 saints of the demon race were the Enchantress, Purple Sea Dragon King, Golden Peng Great Sage, Golden Crow Great Sage, Taotai Great Sage, Cheongqi Great Sage, Taowu Great Sage, Nine-Tailed Celestial Fox Great Sage, Xian Ming Great Sage, and Lu Yuan Great Sage. Among them, the first 9 all had their kin. Only the last, Lu Yuan Great Sage, was a Lu Yuan who had attained the Tao. He had the head of a tiger and the body of an ape. His eyes were as bright as the sun and moon, and his feet could step on 1,000 mountains. The great sage Lu Yuan was also the most disliked figure among the 10 sages of the demon race. His wild nature was difficult to tame, and he was extremely combative. He enjoyed challenging other great demons in order to improve himself in battle. He was also very good at finding opponents, and he specifically looked for great demons that seemed slightly stronger than him, but not too much stronger. Therefore, he had a bad reputation in Infinite Wilderness. However, his abilities were indeed outstanding. In the past, when he challenged Purple Sea Dragon King and Golden Peng Great Sage before he obtained Yudu Minghua, they were both evenly matched. Recently, the 10 saints of the demon race only existed in name. Golden Crow Great Sage had entered the Divine Land in the early years, and was suppressed by Lin Feng. Great Sage Cheongqi's entire race had submitted to Golden Peng Great Sage. As for that loathsome Lu Yuan, he had also gone missing a few years ago. However, the Enchantress and Golden Peng Great Sage had reappeared, and their abilities had greatly increased. This made all the demons in Tianhuang mainland raise their eyebrows. Even though Purple Sea Dragon King, who had always been on par with them, kept a low profile. No one dared to look down on him, be it in Tianhuang mainland or the Divine Land. That was because behind Purple Sea Dragon King stood the primordial heavenly dragon race. The dragon race occupied one of the 7 seas of heaven, primordial 7 seas, the mysterious sea. Most of the strong practitioners of the dragon race lived in the mysterious sea and rarely went out. Only Purple Sea Dragon King was active in Tianhuang mainland as their representative. Even though they kept a low profile, now that the Yudu race had completely disappeared, the dragon race became the strongest race in Tianhuang mainland. They were even stronger than the combination of the phoenix and the divine wudong tree. In recent years, not only was the Divine Land in turmoil because of the rise of Xianmen Tianzong, Tianhuang mainland wasn't peaceful either. The dragon race also gradually had the intention to make a move. Similarly, many hidden great demons like Jiu Ying also started to become active. Outside the Divine Land, the situation in Tianhuang mainland was also changing rapidly. It was too much for the eyes to take in. However, with Lin Feng's current cultivation, he didn't really care about Jiu Ying Great Sage. Unless his abilities changed from Jiu Ying Great Sage to Ying Huang, who had the ability to unify Tianhuang mainland, then Lin Feng would have to pay attention. The space in front of him shook slightly, and a tall figure walked out of it. He was dressed in white scale armor, and his facial features were the same as Lin Feng himself, but there were 2 white horns on his head. Those were the horns of the dragon race. It was Lin Feng's own Brontosaurus clone. When his eyes opened and closed, 4-colored lightning could be faintly seen flashing, shocking the surroundings. After returning from the Spirit Sea to the boundless universe, Brontosaurus's clone set off to Tianhuang mainland while Lin Feng's main body dealt with the matters in the Divine Land. Lin Feng had left marks on the souls of the top direct disciples in his sect, and that was a long time ago. Now that Xiao Yan, Zhu Yi, and the rest had all proven their primordial spirit Tao, this task would naturally be handed over to them. There was no need for Lin Feng to worry about it personally. Brontosaurus's clone had already followed the marks all the way to Scenic Cloud Swamp. Zhou Yunsong's lamp was not extinguished, and he did not show any signs of weakness. Therefore, Brontosaurus's clone was not in a hurry to make a move. He only monitored and waited for Lin Feng's main body to arrive before striking with lightning speed. Lin Feng's main body and Brontosaurus's clone looked at each other and nodded together. Brontosaurus's clone disappeared, and Lin Feng's main body descended to Scenic Cloud Swamp below. The lake water naturally parted, and did not obstruct Lin Feng in the slightest. He went all the way to the bottom of the lake. It was only then that a certain existence at the bottom of the lake was suddenly startled. It looked in shock at Lin Feng, who had suddenly appeared in front of it. It was a strange snake with 9 necks. The snake's mouth spat out een water and een fire. The een water dyed the great swamp black, and the een fire burned fiercely in the water without being affected at all. It looked extremely strange. The strange snake's 9 mouths let out a baby-like cry at the same time. It was the 9-headed fierce beast sage. Although he lived in seclusion in infinite wasteland and rarely came out, the 9-headed fierce beast sage still recognized Lin Feng at a glance. He did not waste any more words. The 9 snake heads hissed together, and a huge array suddenly appeared under him. Countless mysterious and strange runes emerged. Lin Feng's eyes flashed slightly, and he instantly saw through the layers of runes. He saw that the 9-headed fierce beast sage was trying to teleport himself and the small world buried at the bottom of the lake. This dignified demon sage of the astral soul realm seemed to be guarding this small world of consciousness. Lin Feng's divine perception swept over, and his expression became slightly strange. A cicada shedding its carapace. Zhou Yunsong was not in the small world, but Lin Feng found something interesting in it. It turned out that Golden Cicada had also discovered the mark that Lin Feng had left on Zhou Yunsong's divine soul, so he had used his own secret technique to try to erase the mark. However, although Golden Cicada had tried his best to overestimate Lin Feng, he did not expect that Lin Feng's divine powers and dermic powers were equally unique. The divine soul mark that had been erased had been transferred to another treasure that Golden Cicada valued. And because of Golden Cicada's secret technique, it had been even more hidden, so Golden Cicada had not discovered it. In the end, Lin Feng had followed it all the way here. Although he did not find his grand disciple, he had blocked the nine-headed fierce beast sage and the treasure here. Chapter 892. Golden Cicada was a great ancient demon and had reached the Dharma-ending realm. His magical powers were vast, but what really concerned Lin Feng was his innate magical power, cicada shedding, which was a bit of a headache. In particular, Golden Cicada cultivated the Buddhist Dharma and comprehended the Buddhist Bright Samsara method, which combined with his cicada shedding, making it even harder for him to die. In Lin Feng's opinion, this bastard was more like a cockroach than a cicada. His cultivation was indeed extraordinary. The Dharma power imprint that Lin Feng had left on Zhou Yunsong's divine soul when he was in the primordial spirit incarnation realm had been forcibly erased by him. However, Golden Cicada had still underestimated Lin Feng. Although the Dharma power imprint had been removed from Zhou Yunsong's divine soul, it had been transferred to another treasure beside Golden Cicada's hand at that time. This treasure doesn't belong to the nine-headed snakelet. Its original owner is also that old cicada. I can still find him by following the clues of this treasure. Lin Feng thought to himself. With a wave of his Dharma power, he had already sealed the vast scenic cloud swamp, preventing the nine-headed snakelet great sage from leaving. He stretched out his hand and pinched the small world of consciousness in his palm. As for the nine-headed snakelet great sage, he would leave it to Wang Lin and Shi Tianhao to deal with. This demon was fierce. Seeing that it was trapped, it immediately changed its shape, distorting the void. It looked like it was still its original size, but in fact it had become extremely huge. Without distorting the space, the entire scenic cloud swamp might not be able to contain it. Of the 9 snake-like heads, 7 of them opened their bloody mouths. However, they didn't spit out water or fire. Instead, they glowed with starlight. Each head had a strange, resplendent rune that looked like a star in the sky. Wang Lin and Shi Tianhao looked at each other. Oh? This demon has refined 7 stars? When demons cultivated and reached the immortal demon soul realm, they had an endless lifespan and a powerful demon soul. After that, if he successfully condensed the primordial true spirit, he could use the primordial true spirit as a foundation to refine the stars in the sky and guide the power of the stars into his body, making his strength stronger and stronger. When a star was completely sacrificially refined, the great sage of the demon clan would try to move the stars in the sky and completely merge with their own immortal demon soul. If successful, the star soul would be united, and they would be successfully promoted to the 3rd level of the immortal demon soul. After successfully refining a star and fusing it with the demon soul, a great demon at the realm of star soul as one would be able to refine even more stars. With every additional one, the power of the divine ability would naturally increase. Between stars there was a difference in the quality of power. Therefore, it did not mean that the more stars one refined, the more invincible one would be. It also depended on the specific star that was refined. The quality of the 7 stars of the 9-headed fierce beast great sage was not bad. Therefore, when the 7 stars gathered, their demonic power would be very strong. From the looks of it, if he could refine 9 stars, 1 for each of his 9 heads, his demonic power would grow to a new level. Perhaps he would then have the ability to go through tribulations. After recognizing Lin Feng, the 9-headed fierce beast great sage naturally did not dare to hold back. As soon as he came up, he was ready to risk his life. The 7 stars that he had refined were activated together, and the majestic power disrupted time and space. Third senior brother, help me hold the line. As Shi Tianhao spoke, he had already gone up to meet the 9-headed fierce beast great sage. Wang Lin nodded calmly and stared coldly at the 9-headed fierce beast great sage. Leaving his 2 disciples to play with the 9-headed fierce beast great sage, Lin Feng's attention was on the small world of consciousness that he had collected. In the small world there was a huge magic formation. This magic formation was quite strange. It flashed with rolling Buddhist light and emitted the fragrance of sandalwood. There were also countless Buddhist chants sounding out from it. However, the pattern of the magic formation was overflowing with demonic aura. There was a square in the center of the magic formation, and 4 triangular things extended out from it. They were like 4 thin cicada wings, and the pointed points gathered together to form a structure that looked like a pyramid. The center of the cicada wings was filled with golden mist, and it was impossible to see what was placed in this square tower. Lin Feng's heart stirred slightly. He turned to look at the 9-headed fierce beast great sage, who was fighting fiercely with Shi Tianhao. With all 7 stars, the 9-headed fierce beast great sage seemed to have gained the upper hand. However, this did not concern Lin Feng. What attracted Lin Feng's attention was that in the middle of the battle, a figure flashed and joined forces with the 9-headed fierce beast great sage to fight against Shi Tianhao. It was a tall Buddha with an ancient face. At this moment, he was glaring at Meng Qi. He held a monk's staff in his hand and a string of prayer beads hung around his neck, which were actually strung together by the skulls of 9 different races. Buddha rays shot out from the top of the Buddha's head and condensed into a huge Tathagata's Dharmakaya, sitting on a lotus flower. In front of the lotus flower, there was a moon wheel and a throne carried by 8 horses. The Buddha held the Rui bead in his right hand and a bell in his left. He was none other than Bao Xing Tathagata of the 5 Tathagatas. Although he cultivated the most orthodox secret technique of the Buddhist sects, the Buddha scripture, and had even achieved the Tathagata Dharmakaya, reaching the 2nd tier of the Buddhist golden body realm, the fluctuations of his divine consciousness clearly matched that of the 9-headed fierce beast great sage. He was a clone of the 9-headed fierce beast great sage. Just as Golden Cicada had cultivated the 5 Buddha clones, the 9-headed fierce beast great sage, who had followed him, had also cultivated the Buddhist Dharma and cultivated a Buddhist Dharma clone. When eminent monks of the Buddhist sects cultivated the 5 Directions Rulai Sutra, the minute details would also be different. This was because they had fused their own understanding of the great Tao and Dharma into it. The great sage of the 9-headed fierce beast cultivated the Tathagata Sutra. Although it was not exactly the same as Golden Cicadas, Lin Feng could see traces of the same origin at a glance. In a sense, the great sage Zhuang could be considered a disciple of the Golden Cicada. Interesting. Lin Feng smiled and turned his attention back to the square steeple in the small world in front of him. His eyes flashed, and his gaze passed through the barrier formed by the cicada's wings and went straight into the steeple. There was a golden alms bowl. The demonic qi and Buddhist light coexisted in the golden alms bowl, swaying together. The cicada's wings trembled slightly, and a ball of light appeared on it. It was a young monk in gray. Who else could it be but Golden Cicada? He was unable to stop Lin Feng's divine consciousness from penetrating the cicada's wings, but Lin Feng's actions had also alarmed him. Golden Cicada looked at Lin Feng and smiled slightly. Sect Master Lin, I've been rude this time. Please don't blame me. Your grand disciple is safe and sound now. You can rest assured. Lin Feng glanced at him calmly and said, If you have anything to say, Master, let's talk after we meet. I'll go find you soon. Golden Cicada said, Master of the Mystic Gate, please don't make things difficult for the Zhuang. He is only guarding on my orders and has nothing to do with your grand disciple. He doesn't know my whereabouts. Lin Feng did not answer. He reached out and gently wiped the cicada's wings. Golden cicada's light and shadow had already disappeared. However, Lin Feng did not destroy the cicada's wings or the array. He carefully observed the golden alms bowl in the steeple of the cicada's wings and saw that there seemed to be a golden reincarnation of bliss spinning continuously in the golden alms bowl. In the center of the reincarnation was a figure. Lin Feng recognized that figure. It was Marquis Jinghuan, who had been killed by Xiao Yan in the Ying Sea. This person still had short hair and an arrogant expression. He seemed to be bitterly resisting the golden reincarnation's erosion. However, he was not ordinary either. He seemed to have figured out the power of the golden reincarnation and was gradually turning it into his own. This made Lin Feng interested. As far as he knew, Marquis Jinghuan had eaten his fill. As the illegitimate son of Emperor Liang Pan of Zhou, he had received many benefits from the great Zhou dynasty. He had also been secretly supported by the radical faction of the Taishu Temple. At the same time, he had also secretly colluded with Golden Cicada. He had also secretly obtained the incomplete inheritance of the ruthless emperor, the last emperor of the ancient human emperor era. However, in the Ying Sea, Xiao Yan had destroyed the ruthless emperor's battle robe and destroyed his divine soul and physical body, Yuanying. Several of his avatars had also been destroyed. Monk Baoxing, Golden Cicada's avatar, had intended to rescue him, but he had almost been surrounded by the great Zhou dynasty. Now it seemed that Golden Cicada had long left a trick on him. However, this trick might not have been done out of good intentions. Come to think of it, Golden Cicada had secretly supported him back then with ulterior motives from the beginning. Lin Feng carefully observed the golden samsara and discovered that it seemed to be constantly extracting something from Marquis Jinghuan's remnant soul. As Lin Feng's divine perception swept over, his consciousness communicated with the golden samsara. Immediately, many broken images appeared in his mind. In front of him was a middle-aged man who was high-spirited and powerful like a tiger or a wolf. His eyes were filled with the air of a king, as well as endless plundering and greed. He was like a combination of a dragon and a wolf. The middle-aged man held a golden alms bowl in his hand. He carefully analyzed it with his dermic powers. Golden light flashed in the golden alms bowl, but in the center of the golden light was an area that looked like a black hole. That area was silent, but it seemed to contain an extremely terrifying existence. Both the middle-aged man and Lin Feng felt their hearts tremble when they saw it. The middle-aged man stared at the darkness in the golden waves. His eyes revealed a complicated expression: fear, curiosity, fear, desire, greed, and so on. In the depths of the darkness there was a faint flicker of light, but it couldn't be seen clearly. But Lin Feng could very clearly feel that feeling of freedom, as if there was nothing he couldn't do. Realization dawned on Lin Feng. So that's how it is. But what's going on with this Marquis Jinghuan, Liang'an? Could he be the reincarnation of the ruthless emperor? But he doesn't look like it. He seems more like a bystander watching the ruthless emperor and the golden alms bowl. As he pondered, Marquis Jinghuan's thoughts also entered Lin Feng's mind. He was as crazy and greedy as ever. What made Lin Feng smile was that this person was still thinking about seeking revenge on Xiao Yan. Lin Feng smiled. His divine perception directly communicated with Xiao Yan on Jade Capital Mountain. Xiao Yan was still a little confused. His divine perception connected with Marquis Jinghuan in the golden alms bowl. An image of Xiao Yan also appeared in Marquis Jinghuan's mind. He was shocked at first, but then he laughed sinisterly. Xiao Yan, you didn't expect me to still be alive, did you? You can't kill me. You couldn't kill me last time, but the next time we meet, I will definitely kill you. When that time comes, your women, your treasures, they will all be mine. Although I'm currently trapped by Golden Cicada, I've already found a way to escape. Not only that, but after I escape this time, I can use Golden Cicada's arrangements to completely prove my primordial soul Tao. When the time comes, I'll kill you first. In the future, I will naturally have a chance to seek revenge on Golden Cicada. Unless you hide under your master's protection for the rest of your life, you will only be a stepping stone for my rise." Xiao Yin was stunned. It took him a long time to recover. He burst out laughing and took out 2 rag-like items. When Marquis Jinghuan saw this, his eyes immediately turned bloodshot. He roared anxiously, You, Xiao Yin chuckled. He held one in each hand and waved it gently at Marquis Jinghuan. It was the remains of the ruthless emperor's battle armor. Chapter 893. Xiao Yin had a wicked sense of humor. He grabbed 2 pieces of the ruthless emperor's battle armor and shook them at Marquis Jinghuanhu, angering him to the point of vomiting blood. That was the treasure he'd used to build his family, the foundation of his life. At the same time, it was also Marquis Jinghuan's most intimate treasure. His feelings towards the ruthless emperor's battle armor were completely different from other magic treasures. There was a mysterious spiritual connection between him and the ruthless emperor's battle armor, and this connection became increasingly stable and clear as his cultivation increased. The ruthless emperor's teachings and martial arts, divine arts, he learned through the ruthless emperor's battle armor also became more complete. It was as if the two had always been one. This made Marquis Jinghuanhu's ambition grow. He felt that he was the master of this treasure, that he might very well be the reincarnation of the ruthless emperor. He wanted to erase the regrets of his previous life and once again conquer the divine continent. Because the ruthless emperor's battle armor had been too heavily damaged, Marquis Jinghuanhu didn't dare to use it carelessly. Instead, he'd gathered a large amount of resources and poured them into the treasure, hoping to restore it as soon as possible. Who knew that in the Battle of Yingxi, it would be destroyed by Xiao Yan's yin-yang burning heaven formation and 4-colored fire lotus. For Marquis Jinghuanhu it was a heart-wrenching pain. For a moment, Marquis Jinghuanhu even felt that Xiao Yan destroying the ruthless emperor's battle armor was more unacceptable than killing him. Now that Xiao Yan had dangled the remains of the ruthless emperor's battle armor in front of him, he was even more enraged. He almost lost control of his mind and was swallowed by the golden samsara. With great difficulty, Marquis Jinghuanhu calmed his mind and gnashed his teeth at Xiao Yan. Xiao Yan. Good, very good. Do you think you've won? Once this Marquis proves his nascent soul, I'll first refine your yuanying, physical body, and soul into the ruthless emperor's battle armor. I believe it'll be restored to its original state very quickly. I will keep a wisp of your broken soul, so that you can clearly see how I wear the ruthless emperor's battle suit that has refined your nascent soul and conquer the world and sweep across the world. One day, I will let you see clearly that all of your magical powers will be used by me. I will personally kill your people in Xianmen Tianzong, kill your fellow disciples, and let you see me conquer your woman. Xiao Yan sneered and looked at him with a fierce look. He said cheerfully, Oh, I'm sorry, but you're destined not to get what you want. My body has already been refined into my soul. You can't escape, you. Marquis Jinghuan's voice came to a screeching halt. He stared at Xiao Yan as if he had seen a ghost. You, what did you just say? Your primordial spirit? Xiao Yan smiled brightly. What's the problem? A Taiji diagram appeared on his forehead. Marquis Jinghuan's vision blurred for a moment before he saw a Taiji diagram completely made of flames. It stretched across the void, and an incomparably terrifying power seemed to pass through the void. Just by staring at it, he felt a burning pain in his soul. Marquis Jinghuan sucked in a breath of cold air, but he couldn't breathe. After a long while, he roared angrily, Impossible! You were only at the mid-stage of yuanying in the Yingxi. You hadn't even mastered the manifestation of heaven and earth. It's only been a little over 2 years since that time in the Ing Sea. Not to mention the fact that you've been in seclusion in the grotto heaven, where time is accelerated, even if it's effective. How long have you been in seclusion for? How many times did your Xianmen Tianzong accelerate time in the grotto heaven? Could it be 1,000 times faster? Xiao Yan sneered. Oh, you really have the cheek to say that. You brought so many treasures with you, but I, who was at the mid-stage of yuanying, beat you into such a state. To think that you were still thinking about seeking revenge on me. Are you awake yet? Speaking of which, I have to thank you. It was after that battle with you that I reached the late stage of yuanying and mastered the manifestation of heaven and earth. Marquis Jinghuan's face flushed red. Xiao Yan, what do you mean? Xiao Yan smiled as if nothing had happened. By the way, I'll tell you that among my senior and junior brothers, there are also 3 who have proven their primordial spirit like me. Don't think about them. Marquis Jinghuan's eyes widened. How is that possible? If it had only been Xiao Yan, he could have guessed that Xiao Yan had gotten lucky. But now that he heard that besides Xiao Yan, Zhu Yi, Wang Lin, and Shi Tianhao had also reached the essence soul stage, Marquis Jinghuan was dumbfounded. Xiao Yan smiled, looking at him rather interestedly. Looks like your current situation isn't that good either. You should worry more about yourself. Don't fail to form your primordial spirit, and instead your soul completely scatters. Moreover, to be honest, even if you reach the essence soul stage, you won't be able to defeat me with one hand. You'd better save it. Xiao Yan looked him up and down and pursed his lips. You weren't even a match for me when I fought your essence soul stage at the late stage of yuanying. My essence soul manifestation fighting your essence soul manifestation is pure bullying. I have no interest in that at all. If you can reach the Tao integration realm before I reach the void return realm, then I'll be interested in fighting you again. However, you don't look like someone who has that ability. Marquis Jinghuan, who was in the golden samsara vortex, trembled with anger. He looked at Xiao Yan with trembling lips, unable to speak for a long time. His mind became completely unstable. His remnant soul was constantly being crushed by the golden samsara, and he could no longer maintain it. Large amounts of light rushed out of his body and was absorbed by the golden samsara. Lin Feng didn't pay much attention to the conversation between Xiao Yan and Marquis Jinghuan. His eyes were fixed on the golden alms bowl, and his divine sense was communicating with the golden samsara. He already understood. Golden Cicada wanted Marquis Jinghuan's memories from his previous life. Due to the mystery of reincarnation, these memories were already extremely blurry and difficult to distinguish. It was difficult for outsiders to obtain them even by searching his soul. Even a mighty figure like Golden Cicada, who was well versed in the Buddhist Dharma, couldn't directly extract accurate and clear information. He could only nurture Marquis Jinghuan and let him cultivate in the Buddhist Dharma. Then, he would secretly tamper with it. When the time was right, he would strive for success. The mighty middle-aged man with the appearance of a dragon and wolf in Marquis Jinghuan's memories was naturally the last human emperor of the Divine Land during the primordial human emperor era, the Ruthless Emperor. Although there were few images of this emperor, Lin Feng had seen him before. This golden alms bowl wasn't originally the Ruthless Emperor's. Instead, it was an item of the Buddhist sect and not an ordinary Buddhist treasure. In the black area in the center of the light, there was an indistinct figure with a powerful Buddhist dharma and profound intent. Apart from the Buddha who had founded the Buddhist sect, there was no other almighty figure of the Buddhist sect since ancient times. This golden alms bowl was a treasure related to the Buddha. However, for some reason, it had fallen into the hands of the Ruthless Emperor. The Ruthless Emperor had refined it with a secret technique in an attempt to solve the mystery of the Buddha going to the Dead Sea. The black area in the center of the light contained great terror in its deathly stillness. It was like the end of the world, where all things returned to nothingness. Combined with the light and shadow of the Buddha, both the ruthless emperor and Lin Feng came to the same conclusion. That was the mysterious Dead Sea. Golden Cicada's plan was the same as the ruthless emperor's. He also wanted to solve the mystery of the Buddha going to the Dead Sea and never returning. He wanted to understand the Dead Sea, the most mysterious of the 7 seas of Tianyuan. This golden alms bowl was something that the Buddha had carried with him in the past. It was more likely that the Buddha had left some clues for his disciples, and it had a faint connection to the Dead Sea. However, after the ruthless emperor's secret technique, Golden Cicada couldn't open the mysteries hidden in the golden alms bowl using ordinary methods. If he tried to open it by force, he was worried that it would affect the original magical effects of the golden alms bowl. That was why he had turned his attention to Marquis Jing Huan. By now, Lin Feng had also understood Marquis Jing Huan's background. He looked at Marquis Jing Huan and shook his head. As expected, he isn't the reincarnation of the ruthless emperor. Instead, he's a strand of primordial spirit separated from the ruthless emperor's battle robe and integrated into a person's divine soul. They reincarnated together and existed specifically to repair the original body. In Marquis Jing Huan's memories, the perspective of the ruthless emperor studying the golden alms bowl had actually belonged to the ruthless emperor's battle robe. His words rang directly in Marquis Jing Huan's mind. Marquis Jing Huan's body trembled violently. He didn't even have time to distinguish Lin Feng's voice. He roared angrily, "Impossible! Impossible! If the ruthless emperor's battle robe's primordial spirit reincarnated, the artifact itself would be an empty shell. This is impossible. Impossible. I'm not. Marquis Jing Huan was in a daze. Although he refused to believe it and kept telling himself that everything Lin Feng said wasn't true, under the pressure of the golden samsara, the ruthless emperor's battle robe was still mysterious even though it had been destroyed. His connection with the ruthless emperor's battle robe had become even closer, allowing him to see his true self with unprecedented clarity. When a Mahayana artifact escaped calamity and reincarnated, it could directly transform into a human, but the artifact itself would become an empty shell. In the past, the ruthless emperor's battle robe was only one step away from becoming a creation artifact. The artifact's primordial spirit no longer manifested and gradually turned into a vast world's will. After the ruthless emperor's death and his own heavenly wheel was broken, he tried to separate a strand of his primordial spirit to reincarnate in order to help his main body recover in the future. This strand of primordial spirit fused with someone else's soul and didn't reincarnate alone. Thus, it couldn't be considered escaping calamity or taking over a magpie's nest. The two fused into one and shared the memories of their previous lives. The soul was still a human soul, but it had established a mysterious connection with the ruthless emperor's battle robe. Moreover, it had a natural sense of mission to repair the ruthless emperor's battle robe. This kind of reincarnation didn't just happen in one generation, but from generation to generation. Now, he had reincarnated into Marquis Jing Huan, Liang'an, and continued to repair the ruthless emperor's battle robe. This was also why Marquis Jing Huan felt a natural affinity with the ruthless emperor's battle robe. He had thought that he was a destined emperor who had reincarnated to make up for the regrets of his previous life and rule the world once more. Who would have thought that he was just a tool used by a magic treasure to repair himself? To put it bluntly, he was just half a clone refined from a magic treasure. This discovery made Marquis Jing Huan feel dizzy for a moment. He felt as if the world was collapsing and his worldview was shattering. Impossible! I'm not! Marquis Jing Huan shook his head stiffly. His eyes were hollow as countless scenes flashed through his mind. Although he was Liang Pan's illegitimate son, He was one of the top experts of the great Zhou dynasty's younger generation. He was blessed with great fortune, and many times, not only did he escape death, there were also great opportunities waiting for him, making him stronger and stronger. Even the number one holy land in the world, the Taishu Temple, valued him and extended an olive branch to him. The ruthless emperor's martial path, the Tai emperor's martial path, the Taishu Temple's martial path, and the great Thunderclap Temple's martial path were all passed down to him. At such a young age, he had conquered cities and conquered lands, becoming the number one person of the great Zhou dynasty's younger generation. He carried countless treasures with him, and many magic treasures submitted to him, a Yuanian cultivator. It was as if it was the will of the heavens. He took many beauties into his private residence and enjoyed them for himself. If he had to find a place in the world with the most beauties, it would not be the Great Zhou Imperial Palace or the Great Qin Imperial Palace, but his own backyard. The world was vast, and everything he wanted was within his grasp. Even if he could not obtain it for now, he was confident that he would eventually obtain it. What should have been an incomparably clear and real matter suddenly became illusory. Everything, including the meaning of his life, seemed to be in service of one thing: to repair a magic treasure that he had originally viewed as a tool. He was actually that tool? In an instant, Marquis Jing Huan felt as if the entire world before him had become unreal. Chapter 894. Before this moment, Marquis Jinghuan had thought that even if he'd suffered defeat after defeat at the hands of Xianmen Tianzong, even if he'd been slain by Xiao Yan and narrowly escaped death, even if he'd been trapped by Golden Cicada with ill intentions, all of this had been nothing more than a trial on his path of destiny. The more difficult the trial was, the greater his future would be as long as he could overcome this hurdle, and he'd be able to fly higher and further. But now, he only felt that everything in the past had become unreal, as if it were all a dream. After a long period of absent-mindedness, he erupted with hysteria. No. Impossible. All of this is an illusion created by Golden Cicada, not my true past memories. Even if it's true, I can definitely defy the heavens and change my fate. I can change everything. That's right, everything is different now. The ruthless Emperor's battle armor has been completely destroyed. This Marquis's ill-fated fate with the past has been completely severed. From now on, this Marquis's fate is in my own hands. That bullshit ruthless Emperor's battle armor has nothing to do with me. Don't even think about interfering with me. As for the person who destroyed the ruthless Emperor's battle armor, it was the person he hated the most, Xiao Yan. He naturally threw this matter to the back of his mind. Everything is different now. This Marquis has completely broken free from the shackles of the past. My luck will definitely turn for the better. The heavens are with me. This Marquis will definitely change everything. Marquis Jinghuan's eyes were scarlet red. The imperishable imperial flag, the ancient emperor's saber, the frosty moonlight ruler, the god-slaying puppet. I will definitely take back everything that belonged to this Marquis in the past. The Haotian Mirror, the immortal Dragon City, the Grand Imperial Palace, the immortal Heaven Sword, the Taishu Temple. One day, these treasures will all belong to this Marquis. Yan Mingyue, Long Yi, Xiao Zhener, the Flame Fox King, the Black Phoenix. One day, these beauties will all belong to this Marquis. Golden Cicada, Xiao Yan, Liang Pan, Zhu Hongwu, Stonefeather, Yan Nanlai, Quang Heng, Xian Longxing. Even the Mystic Gate's master, Lin Feng. One day, this Marquis will trample all of them under my feet. Marquis Jinghuan repeatedly muttered, one day, one day. One day, Suddenly, his words were stuck in his throat and he could not continue. He watched in shock as the golden samsara surrounding him gradually disappeared. However, not only did he not escape, but his soul was also being worn away along with the golden samsara. Marquis Jinghuan's eyes were filled with horror. He immediately knew that Golden Cicada's secret technique had ended. Originally, when the mystic art ended, he would at most be trapped in the alms bowl. However, Marquis Jinghuan's desperate struggle had caused some changes to the mystic art's ritual. If Golden Cicada had left him alone, he might have been able to resurrect completely with the help of a mystic technique. He might even have had a chance of attaining a primordial soul. But before this, his state of mind had been in chaos and he had completely lost control of himself. Instead, it had led to a change in the secret art that had occurred beyond his expectations. At this moment, Marquis Jinghuan's remnant soul was actually gradually being assimilated by the golden alms bowl. Although he had not died, his life was worse than death. He could not leave this golden alms bowl for the rest of his life, but he was not the artifact spirit of the alms bowl and could not control it. He was simply bound to the alms bowl and had to listen to the control of the alms bowl's master. No. Marquis Jinghuan was finally afraid. Because he had been assimilated by the golden alms bowl, his soul was rapidly recovering. However, his cultivation would remain at its current state for the rest of his life. After regaining his perception of the outside world, Marquis Jinghuan immediately saw Lin Feng. Just as he was about to speak, Lin Feng did not even look at him. With a wave of his sleeve, he put away the golden alms bowl. All that was left was Marquis Jinghuan's anguished wail. After Lin Feng had seen the image of the ruthless emperor studying the alms bowl through the golden alms bowl, he had put it away. He had never taken Marquis Jinghuan to heart. To him, Marquis Jinghuan was just a backup item for his disciple. So although he knew about Marquis Jinghuan's situation, he did not care. When he returned to the mountain and finished exploring the mysteries of the golden alms bowl, he would toss the treasure and Marquis Jinghuan over to Xiao Yan so that Xiao Yan could slowly play with them. However, when the time came, Xiao Yan would probably not be interested. Perhaps he would be tossed to the younger disciples? Then Lin Feng would not care. In any case, this guy would not be able to overturn the heavens. After putting away the golden alms bowl and the cicada wings that Golden Cicada had used to set up the array, Lin Feng pondered for a moment and nodded in satisfaction. Although it was still not easy to find Golden Cicada, it would also be difficult for him to escape this time. He turned to look at the other side and saw that Shi Tianhao was already fighting with the great sage Jiuying. This great demon was truly extraordinary. His demonic power and magical abilities were astonishing. In the heat of the battle, he was able to suppress Shi Tianhao, who had just entered the primordial soul realm. Demons did not refine Dharma treasures. Their true forms were their best weapons. This was especially true after they cultivated to the primordial true spirit realm and became more closely integrated with heaven and earth. When they revealed their true forms, their strength would most likely surpass that of human cultivators of the same realm. When human cultivators cultivated to the Dharma body of the void return realm, they pursued a world of their own. Compared to the original boundless world, this world was still the beginning. However, just like how humans in the mortal world created all kinds of tools and weapons to fight against ferocious beasts, human cultivators could control Dharma treasures. With a handy Dharma treasure, they would not be afraid of great demons of the same realm. The power of the Dharma treasure depended on the power of the Dharma treasure. Sometimes, the combination of human and Dharma treasures would boost each other's Dharma power, producing an effect that was greater than two. Of course, there were also human cultivators with powerful magical powers who could defeat great demons of the same realm empty-handed. They could even challenge great demons of a higher realm than them. However, such cases were relatively rare. In the end, the outcome of the battle depended on the specific situation and could not be generalized. However, Lin Feng's disciples were all strong in the face of strong opponents. Shi Tianhao was also very experienced in fighting with demons. Although it was dangerous to fight with the nine-headed fierce beast sage, the latter had to be careful. In fact, the nine-headed fierce beast sage was even more shocked. Although he recognized Lin Feng, he did not know much about Shi Tianhao. The battle on Mount Shu in the Divine Land had been earth-shattering. Many great demons of the vast land of infinite wilderness had been alarmed, so it was impossible for them not to pay attention to it. However, it was difficult for the demons to obtain information about the specific process of the battle on Jade Capital Mountain. Therefore, when the nine-headed fierce beast sage saw that Shi Tianhao, who was only at the primordial spirit incarnation realm, was so fierce that he could fight head-on with the star-soul integration realm, the nine-headed fierce beast sage could not help but tremble. Wang Lin held the Xiantian God-sealing banner and watched silently from the side, which already put pressure on the nine-headed fierce beast sage. Even if Lin Feng was not looking in his direction, the nine-headed fierce beast sage was still trembling. Now that Lin Feng had put away the golden alms bowl and looked over, the nine-headed fierce beast sage's heart sank even more. Capture him and let him be your practice partner in the future. Now let's go find that old man, Golden Cicada. Lin Feng smiled slightly. His fingers formed a sword, and a heaven-punishing sword chi shot out. Shi Tianhao immediately retreated. The nine-headed fierce beast sage wanted to escape, but the gray sword aura was already in front of him. The ferocious and murderous sword will that could destroy everything terrified the nine-headed fierce beast sage, who had always been cruel. The nine-headed fierce beast sage let out a shrill howl. 7 stars surged together, trying to gather together to resist. But Lin Feng's seemingly unhurried movements were already in front of him in an instant, and his sword pierced through a star. Although the star had been refined by the nine-headed fierce beast sage and merged with his own demon soul, it was still a star. How magnificent was the power of a star! But when Lin Feng stabbed it with his sword, the star instantly dimmed like a small flame that flickered and then went out. Lin Feng's sword pierced through the star without the slightest hindrance. It pointed at one of the nine-headed fierce beast sage's snake-like heads. The nine-headed fierce beast sage's original form was powerful and had an extremely strong defense. Previously, Shi Tianhao had only been able to leave a slight wound on the nine-headed fierce beast sage with the divine light of finality or by stimulating his physical body to stab with the stone sword. But now, Lin Feng's sword directly pierced through the head. The sword aura continued downward and pierced through the snake's long neck. The other 8 heads of the nine-headed fierce beast sage howled in unison. Although there was only a small bloody hole in the head that had been pierced, it seemed to have lost all its vitality. It hung limply like a broken rag doll. And this was because Lin Feng's sword momentum had not been completely exhausted. Otherwise, the sword aura would have pierced the nine-headed fierce beast sage's abdomen directly. Even if he did not die, he would be half dead. Lin Feng wielded his sword with his right hand and reached out with his left hand. He had already grasped the Buddha doppelganger that the nine-headed fierce beast sage had refined. Although I don't know why your real body and doppelganger are together, it's a good opportunity for me to catch them all in one fell swoop. Lin Feng said lightly, I can see through most of the mystery of Golden Cicada's cultivation of Buddhist Dharma with his demon body, but there are still some tricks that I don't understand. I can lend them to you to take a look. I don't want to be ruthless. Otherwise, I would have cut off 8 of your heads and left only one. You'd better calm down. The nine-headed fierce beast sage fell silent. After a long while, a voice came through his divine sense. I don't know where Master is. I don't need you to know, Lin Feng said indifferently. He captured the nine-headed fierce beast sage along with his doppelganger, and then left Scenic Cloud Marsh with Shi Tianhao, Wang Lin, and the others. While trying to figure out the nine-headed fierce beast sage's Dharma doppelganger, Lin Feng followed the cicada-winged golden alms bowl to search for Golden Cicada. The more he learned about the Dharma doppelganger of the demon clan, the deeper Lin Feng's understanding of Golden Cicada. Among the human cultivators or the great sages of the demon clan in the Dharma ending realm, there were definitely people who could defeat Golden Cicada in terms of actual combat. But in terms of the ability to resurrect the dead, combined with the Buddhist Dharma, the way of karma, and his own innate magical powers, Golden Cicada was definitely one of the top few experts of the same realm and strength. In other words, among opponents of the same strength, Golden Cicada was one of the most difficult to kill. Some people could defeat him, but defeating him did not necessarily mean that they could kill him. To kill him, they either had a unique technique that could restrain his cicada's shedding of carapace, or they had to crush him with a considerable gap in strength. Otherwise, he would most likely escape. But for Golden Cicada, who was in the Dharma ending realm, there were really not many people who could crush him. For Lin Feng, such an opponent was not difficult to deal with, but rather annoying. As he flew, Lin Feng suddenly received a voice transmission using Dharma power. It was from Tuntun's father, the Taotai sage. Sect Master Lin, Golden Cicada, has spread the news that you've entered the infinite wilderness. The entire infinite wilderness knows that you've come. I'm afraid that many big demons will come looking for you. Lin Feng chuckled. He had already expected such a situation when he failed to stop Golden Cicada the first time. It was actually not bad for him. It would make it easier for him to find Golden Cicada. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.